All right, people can see us. Hey, everyone. We'll do the intro in a little bit, but Animal was just talking about um, his show, The Populist Block, and audiences moving over, and about fatigue mostly, like political fatigue, crypto fatigue, those kinds of things. So, yeah, we thought maybe you'd benefit from hearing this. So, yeah, continue.
Yeah, what's up, guys? Yeah, I mean, so some of you might remember, maybe not, the Litecoin Underground Spaces. Um, this is how, like, I've been involved with crypto for a while, but really not the community so much up until COVID, I would say, right? Uh, with the lockdowns, I'm Canadian. We had like a 2-year lockdown period, and so my social circle kind of shrank to something that was,
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of miserable, right? So got onto X, found the Litecoin community, I'm a Litecoiner. Um, yeah, I made a bunch of friends up there. So one of which is Litecoin Underground or Underground now. And around the time that Mimblewimble was launched on Litecoin, like 2 years ago or so, or no, maybe 3 years ago actually. How long has it been? It's been a little while.
Mm-hmm.
2022, right?
Yeah, wow, it's been that long.
I think so. Yeah.
Damn.
So yeah, I mean, he started doing spaces on Wednesday night, and showed up weekly. Eventually, I don't know. The time just goes by, right? So I was there regularly, and we were doing these spaces and just talking about crypto and politics and whatnot. Um, and at some point, like around November, around the election, um, even before that, you know what? Like, to be honest, we were no longer just talking primarily about Litecoin, and our show, our spaces, turned into like a political, reactionary type of thing, like opinion debate slash space. And we thought it'd be better maybe to associate ourselves less with the Litecoin brand,
Mm-hmm.
and just do our own thing, which is where the Populist Block came from. Um, so yeah, now our podcast is called The Populist Block. You can follow us on X, The Populist Block. Um, we run a spaces weekly. We do a weird thing. I think we might be the first ones to be doing this. It's the first time I've seen it. We have a spaces running alongside a live stream, like a video live stream.
Mm.
So we use StreamYard, and so the co-host Underground and I have our videos up, and we might have a guest alongside us, and we'll have a tab with the spaces open, so people can. It's kind of like a call-in radio show. People can join the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. They won't be on video necessarily, but their voices will be there. So it's a kind of a fun, interactive live stream that we do. And yeah, we just talk about. I guess we're like politically focused, or at
Mm-hmm.
least what populist issue focused uh, podcast. I don't even want to call it podcast. It's more of like a live stream, I guess, like an unstructured podcast, right?
Yeah. Do you do any like prep for it, or is it just basically maybe there's something in your mind that you want to talk about, but mostly just kind of go live and figure it out from there?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot. A lot of it is unprepared. We just we'll read up articles. We each have some topics that we bring, and we'll do our research on those. If we have a guest, certainly we're going to do our research and check up on the guests and what they're up to and all these things and the topic that we're discussing. Um, we've got a guest coming up, I think the 8th of July. This guy from the Alpha School. I don't know if you've
Mm.
heard of this school, but they're a private school in Austin that uses AI as a teaching tool. Each kid has a tablet, and the classes are structured around this AI application that they've developed. Um, and it's a very, I guess, granular approach to teaching. And it's something AI is something that we talk about quite frequently, obviously because of its uh, disruptive nature, especially amongst people, right? Like, so I mean, we kind of teeter between like being Luddites on the whole thing and like being excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kind of like the Luddites of the past. They were like, these automated printing or textile mills are going to take all our jobs away. we're looking at it in a similar way. It's like history is repeating itself. So we're having similar discussions. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm excited about it. And things like this Alpha School are part of the reason why. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the way things are going. Like, it's one of the, like, I understand it's one of the most like cringe things to be like, uh, AI is going to change everything, man. Like, you know, but it's true, right? As far as it's kind of weird the way the adoption cycle of AI is going, because for some people, like there's still a lot of people and companies that have like almost no exposure to the technology, that are just doing things the old ways, and then there's others that are just completely, everything they've ever done is just erratically different. And I think a lot of them will have a massive advantage, but we're still at the point where it's kind of like crypto, where it's like crypto's here. It's the new financial and data tech out there, and there's just giant swaths of the planet that doesn't own any or has never used the technology, and especially the never used part. And it's this weird times, because in the world of the information age we live in, things move so fast that
Yeah.
they move faster than the world keeps up. The world itself moves faster than it moves, if you know what I mean. And so there's a lot of that kind of stuff, like the fact that there's still big prestigious universities that are still teeming with students and tuition to do something that a few prompts could do way easier. It's still happening at the same time as someone is completely off of that. It's just fascinating time to be alive.
Yeah, like society's got this inertia, right? And we'll have breakthroughs on the margins that seem like, they're not going to penetrate the mainstream, but all it's going to take is one company to really leverage it and have every other company wanting to catch up, right?
Mm-hmm.
One school that leverages it and has like breakthrough results, right? In terms of scoring, for example, and then all other schools will
Mm-hmm.
be like, why don't we do the same thing,
Yeah.
And with regards to this Alpha School, like, it's great. I think this is going to be the future. Eventually someone's going to open source this technology, and parents will be able to do it, to be able to homeschool their kids more easily, or schools will be able to adopt it much more easily. There's always the concern, right? Like with these LLMs, they're
Mm-hmm.
only as honest as the corporations that host them. So which LLM are you going to have train your kids? Is it going to be the Google one, or some it's going to be like DeepSeek or ChatGPT?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we'll have that choice.
Yeah. There's a lot of choices actually, in that regard.
Mhm.
But I mean, especially when you can like self-host and things like that. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. One thing's for sure. Like, so I was homeschooled, and that was back in like the early '90s, right? That
Oh,
ate
cool.
myself. It's so, but like in the middle of nowhere, Mexico, and like, I think the kids these days would refer to something like that as like raw dogging it, because we just, you know, like had to like find curriculums in obscure places and get them like mail ordered and stuff like that. And like today, I mean, you had to figure it out back in the day how to homeschool, for example. But today, I mean, it's so minimal. Like, you could even just, I bet you could go to ChatGPT or Grok or something right now and just say, "Hi, I have a 5-year-old child, and I want to homeschool them. Draw me up a curriculum," and they'll
Mhm.
just do it. And then the more info you give it, the more precise. And you just like you can be the laziest piece of shit ever and just do so much right now. It's
Such a
kind of
great
crazy.
feature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. They're so advanced even now. Like it's pretty staggering. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if and that's the thing. So like, if you are lazy, it makes it like your parents must have been quite involved. Like back then, it must have been harder, right? Much harder to find this stuff. And like you said, now we got the internet, all these resources, people sharing experiences, sharing resources. I don't know what it's like these days. I don't have children yet, but I would imagine it's a lot more attainable for the average
Absolutely.
person.
Yeah.
Um,
And there's something interesting. So in the last, I think I was even on one of your spaces a couple weeks ago when Universal Education Freedom Accounts passed the New Hampshire legislature, which basically gives like a portion of the school funding back to parents if they want to
mhm.
then send their kid to a private school or homeschool or something. And I mean, if you think about it, like hire a, you know, like how much of that could you, like how much, like you could, how much do all the LLMs in the world need per year? That's definitely under 5 grand, right? So like you could pay for that, pay for other stuff, and just like as long as you have some like cursory sort of, I wouldn't say cursory supervision, but as long as you like, I think as long as you have a place like you could put your kid in a physical location where someone like is watching them to make sure that they don't like stab themselves with a knife or something, you know,
Mhm.
foreshadowing maybe. But is like everything else is just yeah, like easy, I would say, or doable, right? It just you just get to say like give them this lesson plan or this idea of like exploration, have them go wild on this LLM and just be like, see what you come up with. And just like, even on like a coffee break or whatever at work, you can be messaging your kid, just be like, hey, how's it
Right.
going? What'd you got? And be like, oh, look what I paint, this beautiful picture I painted with Midjourney. And they're like, awesome. And you just go back to work. And like, as long as they're safe in a house or a co-op with a bunch of other homeschooled kids, but there's a couple adults milling around, making sure everyone's safe. Like, why can't you just do that? It's just the possibilities are endless in this age.
There's this book that I refer to often called The
Mm-hmm.
Diamond Age or A Young
Mm-hmm.
Woman's Illustrated Primer. Have you heard of it?
I don't. I'm gonna say no. I
It's a
maybe,
Neil
but no.
Stephenson book, right? So sci-fi, cyberpunk. Um, and in it, there's this programmer who creates a book, A Young Woman's Illustrated Primer, for what is the equivalent of like the CEO of Google for his daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is essentially in the future like this equivalent to a princess. Anyway, so this programmer is on his way to deliver the book, and he gets robbed by some thugs.
Mm-hmm.
And this thug gets this book and tries to open it, but the book shocks him, and ends up giving it to his younger sister, who, because she's a young woman, is able to open it, and the book binds to her instead of the princess. Um, and the book's got cameras and microphones and all these sensors and stuff, so it's able to grasp um, this child's environment. And unfortunately, she comes from a broken home. You know, the mother's a single mother. She's got men coming in and out of her life. Some of them are abusive. Um, and the book basically teaches the main character of the book
Mm-hmm.
um, what she needs to save herself from the situation. Um, and essentially, the book's main objective is to train the CEO's daughter to become the next CEO of the company.
Yeah.
So this slum girl gets the book, and it takes her out of the slum. Essentially, I don't want to ruin it, but and then like just trains her to be a badass. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this is like the optimistic um, outcome of AI learning. Um, it'd be accessible to anyone. You know, it doesn't matter what your background is, where you're from. It can bring you to the level of everyone else, even the most privileged, right? Um, and so I'm super optimistic in that regard um, with AI. But then again, like with the whole Luddite thing, right? Like the Luddites, what are you going to do when a robot can do anything, right? Like, what do you tell your kids today when they ask you what should I be when I grow up? A plumber? I think being a plumber might be the least, the last rather occupation to be taken over by AI.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, the answer is you're gonna be a prompt engineer, just like your father before you.
right. Even then, yeah. Even as a plumber, like,
Yeah.
um, I think there might be some industry. I want to think like judges will continue to be human just because of ethical concerns.
I think there'll be a judge overseer, like a supreme judge that watches the verdicts of all these other judges. Because I actually had I mean, we could talk for like 8 hours on all this kind of stuff, but like I was chatting with Lynn Ulbricht, Ross Ulbricht's mother, a couple weeks ago, and
Wow, yeah.
she was talking about how the judge who convicted Ross gave him a double life sentence plus 40 years. That was it was in May of that year, and that was her fifth life sentence that year. So she was handing out a life sentence every month. And so, don't you think an AI could do better judgments than that? Like, if you start to see stuff like that happen, then you just like you'd have to have a human like oversee the verdict. But like once the verdict gets computed, then the judge would be like read through it and be like, yeah, that's fine, or be like, oh, I don't know, like this one's a little faulty. Let's tweak it, or let's come in and do something. But even that, I mean, it'd be like one judge, just like policing a few verdicts, just to make sure the model didn't go haywire. But for the most part, I think it'd do a better job even than that. And I mean, we could be chatting about AI for like 8 hours, as I mentioned. I would kind of just. It's an uncertain time, just like everything in human history has been an uncertain time for humans. Adaptability is what we're at. That's what we do. We've done this constantly. We've been cyborgs since this species began, at least, as far as I don't think there's a single human alive in the last like 100,000 years, really, or maybe very few, who could survive without a single pre-manufactured tool. Like at least a sharpened rock or something. But like
Yeah.
humans have this as
Flint.
as this species is today, we've never been able to just survive with us and manipulating the environment directly. We've had to pre-manipulate the tools. And so I think at some point we're going to have to just have like a, self-host LLM in our own cranium basically, and just become more
A
of a
little brain
cyborg.
pal. Yeah, full
Yeah.
on. It's the whole what's it called? Neuralink, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, look, I look forward to the day that we have neural processing units that can work on our phones, right? That we could have an LLM on our phone. I think that's probably the next step. Yeah, we're certainly living in interesting times, as the old Chinese curse goes, right?
Yes.
So, good luck, everybody.
Good luck, everyone.
Yeah.
It's like the what is the Family Guy, like driver crossing a million lanes. Good luck, everybody.
Yeah,
Just like, yeah, good luck, everyone. I mean,
Jesus,
well,
take the wheel. Yeah.
that should be the theme of this thing. All right. Well, let's actually roll the intro and get officially started on this stuff. I did. One of my favorite AI tools is something called Nano GPT, which takes Litecoin Dash, a whole bunch of cryptos, and of course Nano, that basically lets you pay like as little as 10 cents to start prompting. And it basically, instead of having to subscribe to all these different LLMs, you just get one portal that does it all. But also, all their customers' prompts kind of go through as one, so you have like privacy in it. So if you ask, I have a big wart on my ass, this kind of stuff, it could be anyone who uses it. It doesn't have to be connected to you. So I dropped a link in the comments just for people who want to do that now that we're on that kick. But anyway, intro time, and then we'll get going. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. And there we go. Now we're back. So, hey everyone, officially now, 20 or so minutes in, welcome to the Digital Cash Rundown, episode 195. We're getting close to that big 201. I started the live show, I think, middle of 2020 or so, somewhere around there. So it's like almost 5 years of weekly shows, except when I'm traveling, of course. I'm joined by the one and only Animal, or Animal as you like to pronounce it. How's it going, man?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Very well. Just busy running around doing a million things. Would you mind explaining the origin story of your name, or your pseudo, if that's even relevant.
Is it relevant? I mean, not really. Okay, well, it started off when I joined Twitter, I think in 2021 during the pandemic. I kind of I started a non-account just because I want to follow crypto, right? It was like it used to be Reddit, but then around that time, the conversations were happening on Twitter, and I literally let my fingers do some random typing on the keyboard for a username because I wasn't inspired at the time, and the first three letters were NML,
Mm-hmm.
and when you put the at symbol in front of it, it looked like animal or ANML.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I hadn't even put it together. It was only when I joined the Litecoin Underground Spaces that the host called me Animal,
Mm.
and I didn't even get it. I was like, "Who's he talking to?" And he's like, "Yo, Animal." I'm like, "Oh, what?" And he's like, "Yeah, ANML. It looks like animal." And so that's kind of where my name came from, and I liked it. So here I am. My name is Animal. Nice to meet you. Um, I'm a Litecoiner.
Nice.
A
Could
script,
be,
a script maxi, actually,
yeah.
technically.
Could be many worse things. Uh, so, script or S script or whatever it's actually called
Yeah, S script. Yeah,
is Litecoin. It's Dogecoin, right? Is Dogecoin merge mine?
Dogecoin,
And then
Bell's Coin, Pepe Coin,
nice.
Lucky Coin, Junk Coin, soon to be Meow Coin.
And those are the merge mine ones, not just the ones that use the algo, right?
Correct. Yeah, these. Well, so Meow Coin is not yet merged mine, but it should be soon. But yeah, they're all using the Litecoin blockchain to secure their own chains.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So I mean, I really love that model. I think it's a great model for the security of all of these networks. Right. There's a bunch of advantages to it when it comes to bootstrapping new chains with new tech and all this stuff. But well, there's one disadvantage, and that's dilution,
Mm-hmm.
capital dilution, right? But I mean, that's a small price to pay for what could be considered like the hardest security, or is like just hard money, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, as we all know, it's hard money if it's got a vein in it, as Nicole said
Yeah.
on that famous thing they put her up to.
Yeah. Yeah. Nerd Girl famously. Well, I mean, look, I guess.
there's
I won't
not
argue with
there's
that.
there's nothing intelligent to say about that. It's just it's what the kids call a shit post, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, uh, how many of those? So obviously, Litecoin has a purpose.
Hmm.
Dogecoin is much wow. I hear people talk about Bell's coin all the time. I guess in the Litecoin circles, does it do anything? Is there use? I don't know anything about it other than its merge mind.
Well, so I mean, Bell's Coin is um, run by Danny McBride um, and Luke Wright,
Mm,
who are big time into ordinals and stuff. So when they started the chain, they kind of just added on everything in the kitchen sink, everything that that Litecoin was doing. They've added on to it. So you got ordinals there, you got runes. They're working on implementing Opcat. So that's a feature that Litecoin doesn't have, nor does Dogecoin. Um, they're also talking about. I'm not sure where they're at, and like I'm not a Bell's Coin expert, but I heard them talking about implementing some quantum proof
mm,
or quantum resistant type of features. Um, so yeah, I mean these smaller chains, they've got market caps. I think Bell's Coin's got a market cap of like I don't know, 20 million or something. But with all the security of Dogecoin and Litecoin, it's an impressive test bed, if anything. I know that's it's an important thing to have. Some people will just dismiss it, but when you've got something like Bitcoin with a market cap of 2 trillion, people are hesitant to do things that might be considered risky, right? Even if it's for the greater good, they'd be like, you know what? Maybe transacting in it isn't the most important thing after all. Maybe let's just have it hold our value there after all, which is kind of the biggest issue that people have with Bitcoin these days is that it's kind of lost um, it's lost touch with the ethos of what Satoshi originally envisioned.
Yeah, and that's been quite an interesting swing for the Litecoin community, because traditionally the Litecoiners were the biggest supporters of Bitcoin, and now it seems like the ethos split has happened where, I mean, I'm not just saying because you're here and I like you and I like the Litecoin Summit to keep inviting me back to do stuff. It's also that I kind of feel like the Litecoiners are still kind of the same, whereas like the Bitcoin community has shifted far into this like, you know, capricious NGU pumpistan, and that the tech part has either gotten weird into this like hyper anti-filter or pro, like this like really weird in the details kind of stuff, or it's just been like all naked like greed. So I would say that Litecoiners are kind of the Bitcoiners that I knew growing up in the space.
I think a lot of Litecoiners were early Bitcoiners as well. Certainly, like the fact that there's such a huge number go up community, let's say, in Bitcoin, is just a symptom of its success, right? Like when it becomes super successful, you penetrate the mainstream, and you're going to attract all kinds of people, right? A lot of scammers, a lot of people that are just, want the number to go up, which is, there's nothing wrong with, obviously. But yeah, I mean, look, it's unfortunate that, I don't even want to say that. There's a lot of people working on making Bitcoin better. Maybe too many people. There's like maybe too many cooks in the kitchen. And choosing the appropriate solution might be harder now, because you have so many choices. You have so many people with their own agendas that want to, that want their solution to succeed because they'll be able to collect the fees, and have authority over the future of Bitcoin. And we don't know, like, it's how many people are able to vet code, right? Like, the people working on these projects can, and they're going to be saying that their code's superior, right? It's just nature of people. So how do the rest of us make that decision? I guess we have to trust the experts. Yeah. I don't know.
I kind of feel like a lot of chickens are kind of coming home to roost a little bit of like, and it's just like any health habit you have that's not good, or any relationship problem you have, anything unaddressed becomes really nasty over the long period of time. And I kind of feel like during the block size wars, people never really figured out the whole governance thing of like who does what, who decides what code changes should happen and shouldn't, and also who decides the role of like the Bitcoin blockchain. What is it supposed to do? And I kind of feel like the small block camp won on the basis of, well, everyone should be able to run a node, and let's not go crazy on block sizes for now, kind of thing. But that's not an answer. That's a delay, and I feel like the question's never been answered to this day. And so it seems like the ethos of like what is Bitcoin supposed to do as a technology is kind of like just what it does now, leave it alone. And so there's a lot of building that goes nowhere. Like the amount of actual changes to or improvements or things built on Bitcoin in the last decade is, or let's just say 8 years or so, has been kind of negligible. I mean, there's been the Lightning Network, which has had a ton of capital in it, and is still kind of there, but is kind of, it's being used here and there, but eh. And then it's like, okay, well, we need Schnorr and Taproot and stuff, and then what happens from there? Kind of nothing until the ordinals craze came. And we're still not sure if that's like a long-term thing anyway. And then I just keep hearing talks about like covenants, CTV, OpCat, all kinds of different stuff that people are trying to do, and it just doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And the one change, which is the op return data limit, like being removed, seems to have been just massively I wouldn't say massively controversial, like most Bitcoiners don't care at all, but a group of people made it massively controversial. And let me actually look at CoinDance, because people running Bitcoin knots is, I'll throw that up on the screen just a second, because Bitcoin knots is the alternative implementation to Bitcoin Core that's run by Luke Jr., the crazy cat eating person. And it was always very minor, but as of right now, according to CoinDance, it's over 13% of the nodes are knots nodes on Bitcoin right now, which is 3,062. It's not a bad number of nodes. So, I guess before we move on from that, what do you think of the hot take on the knots drama? What do you think of that whole thing?
Yeah, look, I mean, Luke Jr., obviously controversial figure, as you said, self-proclaimed cat eater.
Which that was the joke.
Yeah. No, 13% you said is a significant amount of nodes. I couldn't tell you what I think, whether it's good or bad. Look, it's a decentralized network. People are allowed to do what they want. But I will say, well, about the block size wars is that I think it was a sensible decision at the time. I was a small blocker. The rush to increase the block size was done hastily, and people were right to resist that and to keep those small blocks. But unfortunately, now Bitcoin's in a position where it's kind of hold itself, with that small block stance. When I think increasing the block size is a natural and healthy thing to do within reason. But now Bitcoin can't do that because it'll be essentially admitting defeat, right? Or admitting that Bitcoin Cash was right in their decision. I wish it hadn't happened. I wish, the people who were pushing for Bitcoin Cash would have just been more patient and waited for consensus, because I believe it would have happened eventually. Like by now, if it hadn't happened, I think it would have happened naturally by now. You know what I mean? Like a small block size increase just to make transactions frictionless again,
Because I like to point something out that I had an argument, or a discussion I should say, on the space, the Dash space yesterday, about can you be a store of value without a medium of exchange? And I would argue that Bitcoin is one of the most used payments protocols, and probably the most used in crypto, other than maybe some stable coins. It's just not small type payments. It just, people are still transferring massive amounts. They're still buying bigger items, maybe luxury items, but also Bitrefill still has Bitcoin as one of the, I think it's still the largest thing in Bitrefill in terms of total volume, but people are buying $100, $200, $500 at a time worth of gift credit, for example. Yeah. And so there's people are still using the Bitcoin blockchain to move money around, and they're paying hundreds of thousands a day in fees, if not $1 million or something. And I think that where Bitcoin sort of stalled out, and by the way, I don't think, I believe you should be able to have massive amounts of transactions on chain for very cheap, and that's the better way to go for the global financial sovereignty. But I'm just being small blocker advocate here for a second. I think that you could double or quadruple the Bitcoin block size, and I think you'd still have, especially if it had been done over time, and you'd still have the same the same fees, kind of like a 50-cent transaction or whatever the market will pay. But then you just have so much more transactions on the network and network revenue, and you wouldn't have to worry about weird things like ordinals and stuff. And
the mempool filling up.
Yeah, and then probably probably no one would use Litecoin in that situation, right? Because but that's again, their loss, our gain, right? In terms of that thing.
You're talking about Bitrefill and how Bitcoin was still the largest, and it is. And I think maybe in some places, is it USDT on Tron is leading?
It's a big chunk of Bitrefill's transaction volume.
Yeah, but there is in some countries where Litecoin is surpassing even USDT, which is interesting. Mostly in developing nations. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we interviewed the guy, I forget his name, Matt Alberg,
Mm-hmm.
who works for Bitrefill, and he was showing us this data, and it was pretty interesting. Mine was about
Yeah.
a year ago, so it might have changed by now, but yeah, Matt was saying how, Litecoin has a significant market share in their, at least in the amount of transactions that they're seeing on their end. Um, and if you look at BitPay, I think maybe not in dollar value, but in terms of transaction volume, uh, Litecoin has been top of the list, like surpassing Bitcoin and
Yeah. I would
everything else they
love
got.
I would love to dive into why BitPay's market share breakdown is what it is, because um, it's clear that every major payment processor still has a lot of Bitcoin, but it's mostly given way to, I guess stablecoins are the biggest winner, but like Litecoin's still very strong in all of them. But like BitPay is like the dominant one. Like I wonder if those maybe cheap stablecoins aren't supported by BitPay, so therefore they don't do it. Maybe it's the geography of merchants
Hmm.
that it's like countries or areas or sectors that use like that don't like fiat, like well like because someone in the developing world is not going to care about Tether on Tron, is not going to have a problem with it, whereas someone in the US, maybe a crypto guy in the US, might feel dirty about it, and so they'd use Litecoin rather than that. So it'd be
And
interesting to explore. Yeah.
some people do actually prefer storing their value in the US dollar, right? Like if
Mm-hmm.
you're in a country, say Argentina, for example, your currency is being debased daily. People, and maybe they don't feel comfortable with Bitcoin or crypto as a whole, but they understand that the value of the US dollar is a safe haven for them by comparison, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
they're transacting a lot in it. Um, Another thing is, so BitPay's the biggest, I would say, option for merchants, right, at this
Mm-hmm.
point. And they've been kind of the only option. There are other options for sure, but they're like a household name, at least in the crypto space. Um, there are things like BTC Pay Server, which I'm a huge fan of, which
Mm-hmm.
is gaining market share. So no, I've used it a couple times. There's a VPN provider
Mm-hmm.
called uh, NIM VPN, right? They use BTC Pay Server, and actually they recently started accepting Litecoin on MWeb. So
Mm-hmm.
you can use MWeb with NIM VPN, which is pretty sweet. And they're using BTC Pay Server.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of a new development. So just to change topics a bit, but Hector from the Litecoin Foundation has been working on this BTC Pay Server MWeb plugin for like the last year or so. And
Mm-hmm.
it was finally finished in February this year.
Mm-hmm.
And it works very, very well. Like if you have a BTC Pay, BTC Pay Server 2.0, like the newest version of it, you can install the plugin, do a small command line hack, and you'll be up and running with MWeb on your
Yeah.
instance.
Kind of throw up on the screen the post that you made about how to install and configure the new MWeb plugin for BTC Pay Server.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like it seems like all like the crypto hardcores is what they use. Um, I know a lot of merchants that won't kind of self-host anything, so they're not quite as much into that like DIY stuff. But there's tools for that too. There's
Right.
things for all kinds. But I kind of
And I
feel
mean,
like the cypherpunk type would use something like this for sure.
and the BTC Pay Server guys, they'll tell you that they're looking for BTC Pay Server ambassadors, right? People who are technical like you and I who can set up
Hmm.
an instance and onboard merchants, right? Um, like if you have a BTC Pay Server instance, you can set up multiple stores. So if you've got some local merchants, say a restaurant or like a beer store or something, you can hook them up. And I mean, it's a comprehensive suite of business tools. So you can set in your tax rate and it generates invoices and all that stuff and tax reports for you. It plugs into QuickBooks Online. So if you use QuickBooks, it's pretty good. Um, and I mean, it's self-custodial, right? Even the BTC Pay Server ambassador won't have access to your private keys. So there's a lot of security baked into that, and it's non-KYC. which is something that is, I would say that's the only downside, if you look at it that way, to BitPay, is that, you know, you got a KYC.
Mm-hmm.
Although, yeah, I mean, some people might not see it that way, but in keeping with the ethos of Satoshi and peer-to-peer, BTC Pay Server, I think, is doing a fantastic job. And I wish it like all the success in the world. Frankly, it's my favorite open source project. It's a huge project. It pulls on a whole bunch of other open source projects. And yeah, no, it was a huge undertaking, and they've done a fantastic job.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely. It is funny. Like, you take what you can get. I do know that. I remember BTC Pay Server kind of came out of people hating on BitPay because, or people being Bitcoin maximalists mostly, did not like that it supported shitcoins or something. I don't remember what.
It was Nicolas Dorier, a French guy, who when when BitPay took a side during the block wars, they chose Bitcoin XT. He was like, you know, his famous tweet was, "My faith in you is broken. I will make you obsolete." And then shortly after, he started.
Such a drama queen.
It's a little, but it's kind of bad. I don't know. And then, he made good on his promise.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great, like, it's kind of a, I think maybe sort of like a little bit of a silly impetus behind building something great. As far as like, we should make, instead of just I'll start my own BitPay. It's like we'll make a better version, in at least decentralized in cypherpunk terms, a better version. And I should say, in a lot of ways, better version, because I did use, when I was in Toronto a few weeks ago at the Blockchain Futurist conference right before Consensus, there was some company, I can't remember off the top of my head their name, but that does those like metal etching of seed phrases kind of thing. And so I'm like, oh, I'll buy one of those. It's like, do you take crypto? And they're like, okay, yeah, I think we do. Yeah, I'm like,
hey, pulled out his Coinbase account.
And I'm like, has anyone paid you in crypto? Oh, not here yet. But last year we got like one person or two people. I'm just like, I'm sad, but like I didn't need one of these, but I was like, let me get it. And so, hey, sorry. And so then he's like, I don't know how to do this. Sorry. Oh, we got BitPay. And I'm like, all right, well, I do have some Litecoin on me, so I can use BitPay. And so they pulled out the phone, and then they're like, oh, what's your email? This thing wants your email the customer email in order to do it. I'm like, really? I'm like, oh, sorry, we'll just enter our own. Don't worry. They were like super flustered about it. And so then I just paid, and then it would like, well, first of all, it's like looked at like the list of, it's like, you want to pay, and then it's like, which wallet do you have? This giant list of wallet comes down. I'm just like, yo, this sucks. And so I look at all of these wallets, and Edge Wallet, which again, do you think Edge Wallet is one of the more common crypto multi-coin wallets out there? It's got to be. It's one of the bigger ones, right?
Yeah, for sure. I've used it a little bit, and I know the CEO Paul, right?
Yes.
He was talking about eventually adding MWeb, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
I'll probably use it more then. But yeah, like
they didn't have Edge on the list is the point. And I'm just like,
didn't.
What the hell? And so, but luckily, like I've been in the weeds for enough time that I knew it's just that there's no standards on a lot of these wallets for payment protocols. So I just knew, like, I knew they did have Exodus on the list. And I'm like, well, Exodus just can scan a QR. It can do everything that Edge can't. So I picked Exodus and then used my Edge wallet unpaid. And then they're like, all right, you paid? I'm like, yeah, did it confirm it? Oh, not yet. Don't worry about it. You're good. And they just like got embarrassed and like got rid of me. The BitPay experience is like, I don't know who the hell these Litecoiners are using BitPay all the time. It fucking sucks. It's awful. BitPay used to be good. It's one of the worst crypto experiences, and they will sometimes hold your funds hostage as the payee and make you KYC and weird shit like that. So like, BitPay is awful. Like, no, like I hope I don't offend any who works at BitPay who's watching here. And yes, I do still want them to add Dash for whatever reason, but don't use BitPay. Use other shit instead.
But I think there is a space for companies like BitPay in the world,
like BitPay, but not BitPay.
Like, yeah, if
better
if you need to KYC, if that's an absolute must for you, I think things like restaurants, for example, a more appropriate solution is BTC Pay Server. But yeah, I certainly think that BitPay has a place, and I don't want to poo-poo them at all. I think the KYC thing's a bit of a bummer, but it's understandable. They live within the context of reality, which unfortunately KYC is part of for now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think the fact that they were there so early and they were part of the mission early on, and they had to be part of growing Bitcoin up, and a big part of that is doing KYC, paying your taxes, all these things that people hate talking and doing, but talking about and doing, but are part of reality. We're not going to have mainstream adoption unless we make our overseers happy at a minimum with paying taxes and KYC. As much as I might, from an ethical and moral perspective, disagree with some of this stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, I understand their historical role, and I'm a big fan of historical BitPay. I just would never set up a merchant with them unless I had to. There's other ones.
And now when BTC Pay Server is so much fun. Like, honestly, it's just, I don't know if you've played with it at all, but like setting it up wasn't too difficult. And it's got so many, like you can use, like there's a Shapeshift plugin, right? So with Shapeshift, you can accept basically anything. And it does all the hard work, all the accounting stuff for you, all like the bookkeeping, it does it for you. So for business, your bookkeeper should be able to understand how to use it and the tools immediately, with like a little onboarding, but like nothing that's super painful.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's see. Before we get into like the actual like stuff we were going to talk about, other than this one thing, I'm going to show Coin ATM Radar real quick, and then we just start going in. This is probably the longest I've gone into a podcast without showing Coin ATM Radar. So they get a mid-roll instead of a beginning one this time. So this podcast is very proudly sponsored by Coin ATM Radar. When buying crypto with cash, which, again, more private typically on one side of things, an ATM is much more reliable and safer than meeting some random person in a random place. But again, as you're pointing out with BTC Pay Server, that's kind of fun, but could be dangerous. So unlike an exchange which could freeze your account, you truly own all the crypto you buy. With Coin ATM Radar, you can find crypto ATMs and other services where you can buy or sell cryptos for cash. But of course, I'm more of the seller side. On the website, you can search by coin, address, if an ATM supports selling as well as buying. And you can also search by geographical area such as country, state, or city. And you can check and compare actual current fees at different ATMs. So go check them out at coinatmradar.com, which is coinatmradar.com, or .com for the people who have never used a website before. So I definitely I've been pushing the boundaries of some of the ad reads, and I like these guys, but I kind of almost want a complaint. I want to see if I can get a complaint from them. Be like, dude, can you next time not talk about the stabbing? I'm like, all right, fine. Like,
oh, is that okay? Yeah, I mean, that's a legitimate concern, though.
Yeah, I try to make it fun, but it is true as far as like, I think we're finally. This is going to be clipped, I'm sure, at some point. But we're in the for crypto, we're in the golden age of stabbing right now, because we're finally at the point where crypto is big and popular enough that everyone knows it. Everyone knows it has value. Everyone knows that crypto people probably have a lot of money. Again, not me, but other people who, we're a little bit more like investor minded about it. And also it's not.
I mean, neither, by the way, I'm a Litecoiner.
Yeah, pour one out for the homies, right? But you get to the point where I'm going to mute you for just a second while the thing goes through, because I'm just talking anyway, but don't worry about it. I'll unmute you in a second. But, oh, there we go. It's done. So, yeah, it's also the point where people don't know how to secure their crypto or not talk about it or, whatever. And there's also few enough people where a crypto person is a target, whereas in the future, anyone with like a Zcash shirt, such as me right now, no, it wouldn't be remarkable. So we're in the golden age of stabbing right now, so be very careful with crypto and meeting strangers and things, especially if you live in France for some reason. They'd really love to mess up the French.
Yeah.
which a lot of people do anyway for recreational purposes. But I'm talking about like crypto jackings and stuff. It's very popular, very big in France these days.
Yeah. No, Lops talk at the Litecoin Summit are some of my favorite, but also, some of my they're the scariest talks. He's got that GitHub page, right, with all the crypto robberies, which is
Yes.
just nightmare juice for someone involved in crypto at all. Yeah. No, I mean, I used to mine, but at some point I stopped mining just because I was like, man, I was paranoid that someone might come in my house and try to steal my miners, I got to have friends over, have gatherings and whatnot. And you can hear them, right? Like, so you can't really hide them. And yeah, that's the reason why I'm not mining anymore, just because I felt like it was such a liability, to my personal safety. Yeah, it's a lot easier to protect yourself and to make it so that it's safe from like a wrench attack. I mean, if someone wants to kill you, they're gonna kill you.
Yeah, I guess, especially in countries where it's more difficult to get a pew pew,
Yeah.
Which
Yeah. Vigilance is key. And anyways.
Yeah. So don't meet up people randomly in the street to buy or sell crypto. Only do it if you're doing peer-to-peer trades. Be careful. Do it with people you actually already know. Otherwise, use an ATM through Coin ATM Reader. But otherwise, whatever. That's kind of the general message there. And so the general theme of this thing, which we've kind of been, sort of talking about or around, is the privacy coin super cycle type thing, which I think, and this is just maybe my delusional thesis, but I think that in the next cycle, right, we're kind of in the last bull year of this cycle. I think the next cycle, like 4 or 5 years from now, privacy is going to be one of the big things that kind of leads everything in that cycle. And my kind of, other than it's just an important part of crypto that's being neglected a lot, other than that, my kind of circumstantial evidence around that is I just see it everywhere. Like Litecoin going hard into it. You get, obviously, Zcash having a little bit of a resurgence kind of thing. Monero doing quite well in the markets despite being like, smashed on the exchange front. Solana, like stable coins getting into it, just like all these kinds of indicators. Apple saying, iPhone means privacy is their marketing copy, their front. Everyone's sort of talking about privacy these days, and it's kind of like everyone in certain sectors. And so I think that we're not seeing privacy tech really like super widely adopted, or the crypto's pumping either. And I think it's just like the lull before the storm kind of thing. But maybe that's my own like hopium delusion. Do you have a different perspective?
No, I definitely think that privacy is becoming less of a taboo topic, not only in crypto, but in regular life. You had Kash Patel early this year talk about how people should be using Signal, which is the first time someone from the FBI had suggested such a thing.
Yeah. They used to not like that. They'd be like, let us spy on you, please. But
Right. So when the authorities are advising us to do it, maybe they know something we don't. Maybe they've realized how easy it is for anyone to read your SMS messages, right? And how insecure they are. Honestly, like I can't wait for the SMS / cell phone number thing to be a thing of the past.
yeah.
I don't look. My main number, all I get on it are spam calls. You know what I mean? All my friends on either Facebook or Telegram or whatever, like they're just elsewhere. That's how we communicate. And I'll talk to my bank on the phone if I have to. Like there's a bunch of, obviously your ISP and whatnot, but it's an archaic technology that's got severe security flaws. And I'm not sure why we're still using it. I feel like there might be some boomers, or maybe like even people from the great generation, right? Or grandparents.
Not many of them left.
Right. And so like, I don't want to say it or make it sound bad, but like they're kind of holding us back in that regard. And unfortunately, I think we'll have to wait for them to pass on before we
Hmm.
start to see like a shift away from telephone numbers. But yeah, man, like telephones and SMS technology, yeah, it's getting better. There's some encryption being implemented with was it VLT or Volt LT or something? But I don't know. I think we're ready for some kind of unified, maybe not unified, but open source kind of communication technology that's digital and secure with built-in encryption. Um, I think Signal's great, but it is a little complicated for like non-technical users.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I
The
just I would love to one day be able to like hit up my bank on Facebook. You know what I mean? Or like my ISP, just to communicate with them through Telegram or something, and have them know that it's me. And like just think of how many spam callers, like these companies that just spam people and scam people out of stuff, like these call centers. How many of them would go out
hmm
of business immediately um, if they had to use verified accounts to contact anyone?
Yeah, it's weird because there's this life cycle of tech where tech at some point, it becomes like it's new and it's like clunky and terrible, and then it becomes kind of early adopter ish and it's fine. And then it becomes hot when like everyone's using it. And then it
Hmm.
becomes mainstream when everyone, even people you don't like, is on it. But then there's this like saturation level where everyone's on it against their will at this point, and it's just you're getting hit by so many annoying things, and eventually it becomes this wasteland of like kind of like the dead internet theory type thing, but like that level of things, and then everyone's on something else. And I feel like phones are already there where
Hmm.
people still use phone numbers and stuff, but they're saturated with spam calls and things like that, and exploits and like sim swapping things and just like all this kind of crap. And email is starting to get to the same thing. I have like a bunch of different emails, right? I have like a personal email with a bunch of like alias accounts. I have a work email. I have like my personal work email. I have another like, and then I'm always inundated in just crap. Like I can never catch a break. Email's over too. It's not over yet, but you're seeing the signs. It's going to be over. And I don't know
Yeah,
what the next thing is once you get rid of phone numbers and emails, but it's what the next thing people have consensus over will be. But I don't know,
I think it's
maybe
probably going to be Facebook, dude. Honestly, they just have such a huge market share on people.
forbid
I
the
uh,
thought. I hate Facebook.
I understand.
I used to be a very heavy Facebook user, and it used
Hmm.
to be good. But just yesterday I was trying to delegate access to my Instagram account so people could post clips of this podcast, and it is a nightmare of because you can't do it natively. You have to link your Instagram to a
To a
Facebook
business
business
account.
account
Yeah.
and then go in and do all this stuff. And I gave up. I couldn't get there. It was just such a morass of everything's not working, everything's complicated, it doesn't make sense. And I ran a Lightning Network node, right? And this is somehow worse. Like, how is this worse than the Lightning Network?
Oh, they're
So,
straight up blockers, man. Like there are
yeah.
processes in place that block you straight up. I mean, I've had similar issues. I ended up talking to support. Someone called me and they helped with some stuff. But yeah, I understand, man. It's complicated, and sometimes you just can't even do the thing you want to do. Like there's a block, like some kind of system block that prevents people from doing it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and they're working on it, right? Like because the whole Facebook business platform is kind of new. They forced people onto it recently. It used to be optional, but now it's like you can't use the old way of doing things. But yeah, that said, like they do verify people's identities now, right? Like you can't create a Facebook profile if you're not using your real name, for example. And I think it's just so
Hmm.
pervasive that it's gonna win out. That's just my prediction, though. It's not. It wouldn't be my choice, although I don't have a better idea at this point as to what might be better as a successor to the phone number network.
It might. So, here's the thing. Facebook is such a fascinating thing because of its status. Like it's crazy to think that just like a social networking, like share your pictures or your family vacation site, became like an empire with billions of users, many billions of users. Yeah, technically, I guess. And like they have a massive counterterrorism office, like Facebook does,
Hmm.
just for that stuff. And it's so pervasive and universal that I think that they kind of did everything, right? You have your basic profile, and then you could create businesses. So your business runs through there, your communications run through there. Then you add your payments. I actually knew someone who used to illegally sell cannabis peer to peer, and some people paid him through Facebook Messenger, which is the
Wow.
most
Yeah.
hilariously, I think, dumb thing you could do. But it's kind of that cradle to the grave type all-in-one super app. Now the problem with Facebook, as I mentioned, is it sucks. Like the user experience has gotten so bad, and they keep forcing new bad things on people all the time. I don't even post.
Who wants llama in their chats? Who wants, Meta AI in their DMs? I don't. Like,
Yeah, it's so bad that like I don't even share anything on this show anymore on X because it just, I mean
mhm.
on Facebook because it just sucks. It just doesn't work. I do it on X. X is great.
Yeah.
That's the thing is I think if there would be a competitor to the throne, it would be probably X under Elon's stewardship, I guess, because they rolled out encrypted messages that I've tested out a little bit. They got, whole creators, long form content. They really expanded it to like a bunch of stuff, and now they're doing the payment stuff too. And so you can, it's like now it's the money, the messaging, and like your social thing, and like your business and your everything is like there, but
Yeah.
they're not terrible like the Meta Empire. So I don't know. I mean, who knows what's going to be the thing? But like, I think Meta has gotten so massive that it's like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not going to go away for a while because it's hit this sort of escape velocity thing, where there's so many people involved with it that now, even if it does start to suck, people will do all kinds of things to make it like stick around because it's such a big figment of their life. And
Hmm.
it's probably going to be the same with Meta, even though there will be challengers.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think X is well positioned. They're definitely the go-to for news.
Hmm.
I don't know how they operate in terms of their customer support, how good or bad that they are. I know for like some businesses, if you get your Facebook account canceled or something or blocked, it can destroy your business. Same thing with like Google Maps. If
Oh,
you know,
it's not even
yeah,
go to the Google empire.
right. And it's like businesses depend so heavily on these social networks, on Google Maps, on Meta for Business and Instagram, that if they're not using them, they're losing out on a lot of money. Right? They could go bankrupt,
Hmm.
depending on what industry, even. So, yeah, is look, X is still, I feel like, in its infancy under the stewardship of Elon Musk. Like you said, like it's got the potential to do these things. And yeah, actually thinking about it, I'm kind of hoping that it does go that way. But you know, with bated breath, and I think there's the potential for for the same problems to occur there, right? When you
Hmm.
get your Facebook account blocked or your ad account blocked, you're screwed, and there's no recourse, right? There's no like I got a buddy who got his computer hacked, um, and they used his ad account, his personal account, to send ads, and now he can't
Hmm.
put ads out. He's been blocked, and there's been trying for years to get to send emails to support, and they don't even have the means, despite the fact that they verified his identity and all this stuff. They can't even unblock his ad account. There's no recourse for him. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of tragic, when someone's real name gets blocked on Meta. What do they do? They're kind of screwed.
Yeah,
You know?
and that's one thing that people like. Uh, People say like they'll never learn to self custody crypto. It's just like those people have never hit any kind of a either paperwork in government and stuff or a technological dead end in Web two. Like they've never hit like, sorry, you're done. Like, it's funny. I actually have a success story from yesterday, because I'm getting all these accounts. I was locked out of my TikTok account, my not my personal TikTok account, which I just used to consume the trash that's on there, but like my for this podcast, I was locked out of that because there was this feature of like create a TikTok account with your X account. So I used my Digital Cash Network X account to create a TikTok account, and then eventually they deprecated that feature, and then I just had no way of logging back in, and I could not figure it out. And so it was like a year or so of just like, I guess I'm not doing this stuff. And now I'm getting back to posting clips and stuff. I just tried again yesterday, and they somehow fixed that.
Added the feature, yeah.
There was somehow a way to recover where now it was like a endless loop of death before. And now I just like, so now I'm back in and I changed the password, and now I have like a proper TikTok account, not like
you've got a recovery email or something, so you can, if you do lock the front door, you can come in the back door type of thing.
Yeah, there's something like that now, which I never had originally, and that does get fixed. But a lot of places you just get stuck permanently. You're just done. Like you mentioned the ad account thing. Like they could unblock them, they could do it, but they just won't. Because
support doesn't have the tools, and they escalate it, and there's like the people that they escalate to either choose not to, or they also don't have the tools. I don't know.
Someone has the tools.
Yeah. But we spoke to someone in India, and they're like, yeah, okay, we'll look at it. And they try, and they sent multiple support tickets and emails and all this stuff, and it never got unblocked. And Googling it, doing some research and to other people's experiences, it seems like it is a dead end. And this guy's options are to create a new Facebook, like to kill his account, right? His current Facebook account with all of the content that he's curated over the years, and to start fresh, to re-verify with a new Facebook profile. And yeah, that's the only option that they've got. Which for a business, if you got, thousands of followers, could kill you. Right?
Of course.
At least have a meaningful impact on your bottom line. Yeah.
It just happened to BTC Sessions. I don't know if you remember that guy.
Yeah, a Canadian guy.
Yeah, Canadian, small guy, I hear. But he got banned 2 days ago. His channel got nuked, and then he got it back since then. So it's good that he's back. But his YouTube channel, which is I don't know if it's his primary source of income or something. I don't really know the guy too much because he's like a maxi, but he did get nuked. And there's a lot of people that get nuked. That's why I proudly have a shitty, tiny YouTube channel that you're currently on, by the way. Because if it gets nuked, I wouldn't cry too much. Like, nah. But I'm also on Odyssey, right? Also published to X now, and all kinds of different stuff. So, it is what it is.
Just a quick question on that. Like, have you considered Rumble? And if not, why not?
Yeah, there was BitChute too. People were saying, is that still a thing, or is that gone now?
Rumble?
No, BitChute.
Oh,
that was one of the early ones. And then Rumble, here's the thing. It's kind of like saying, have you remember when Gab was a big thing?
No. Gab?
Yeah, do you know what that is?
No.
It was like an uncensored Twitter that had a picture of the Pepe Frog was the logo, and a lot of racists use it, I guess. And and it was sort of a big thing, and I got on there just to be on different, and it just has been a waste, and I don't even use it anymore. Kind of like Blue Sky, when Blue Sky was like, oh my gosh, and now I'm publishing to Blue Sky. It's a waste of time. So basically on that, no, I'm not on Rumble yet, only because it's not decentralized blockchain based whatever, and I don't know if it's worth it for a crypto channel. And I don't know if Rumble as a whole is a flash in the pan, or that was my thinking when I did it. I didn't know if it was a flash in the pan. So you're saying I should probably be on Rumble?
I don't know. I know that because I've never heard of Odyssey before you. Let's just put that out there.
That's remember Library, the Library blockchain, LBRY.
No.
Ooh, that's old school shit. That'll have to be a trip on down memory lane. But yeah, Odyssey was Rumble's #1 competitor, built on the
Steam
Library
blockchain. Or?
No, it's Library is I don't know. It's still going currently, but the TLDR kind of the short story is Library LBRY is a Bitcoin-based blockchain that was built to be like a content platform to host content and things like that. And it was kind of since 2015 or 16, I think. And they built the Odyssey site on top of it, and it got tens of millions of views and users and stuff like that. It got really pretty big, and then the U.S. SEC targeted the library, the company behind the blockchain, and just like nuked them. And then since then, Odyssey's still been a thing. It's still been around, and then now they're switching to the Arweave blockchain, and they're kind of like moving over, and it still has a ton of like millions of users, I guess. But it was always like nipping at Rumble's heels. Like it was like at 20 to 30% the users at least, or it was like close to half actually at one point before Rumble got big, before the SEC nuked them, and then Rumble got big. So now it's like not in the same league probably, but it was like in the same league for a while.
Right. Yeah. Rumble got really big with all the COVID content going over there. Right. Like, yeah, but I mean, I think the problem with it is that it's just largely a political platform, right? Like right-leaning politics. And I mean, I use YouTube daily. Like I'm addicted to to YouTube, right? Just like if you want to know anything, if you want to learn something, like it's on YouTube. That's the go-to for stuff. And so Rumble just isn't that for me. And despite the fact that I have an account, I never log on to it. But this Odyssey thing seems interesting. The fact that it's decentralized, right? Seems like a compelling argument to start using it. Yeah, hopefully it takes off and gains back that market share from Rumble. Not that I have anything against Rumble, but like I said, it's just is that my phone?
Yeah, definitely not mine. I have everything silent always.
I don't know if I can stop that.
I don't hear anything anymore. But yeah, that's kind of the thing. If Rumble does have a big enough crypto presence, then I'll give it a shot, I guess. You know, especially if they have a way to like, I don't even know what the etiquette is when you get to a new platform. Like, do you upload all of your channel's videos from the beginning to end? Do you just start, just add it to the rotation, just start posting? Like, what? How do you do it? But look, when I started publishing to X, I just started where I was, and then every once in a while there was a popular old video that I would just re-upload to X, because I'm like, okay, well, this could get a second wind. But anyway, I guess I'll figure that out.
Yeah, no, I don't think you should re-upload stuff. Probably not, unless you have a bunch of things that you can easily upload. I don't know. I think YouTube's still it's going to be hard to dethrone YouTube.
Absolutely.
And probably the best thing would be for them to integrate some kind of crypto payment option.
It won't
the best
be that long. Like, it's got to be within 5 years or 6 years. They'll have to, because the way the world's going, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But yes, so privacy stuff, right? So there's a few things we're going to talk about that, you know, a few specific things. There's this Dash post I wanted to cover about the overhaul. I don't know, you were at the Litecoin Summit, you were running around a lot, right? Like, very busy. You remember Danny Sessom, the crypto show guy, right?
No, was he there? I didn't meet him, I don't think.
Yeah, he's a tan, kind of blue-collar looking fellow who was doing some interviews. He kind of interviewed me twice there, because one day the footage got all fucked up. We had to do it again the next day. But it was in the mornings. I was there doing a podcast with them. The Crypto Show, I think, is the oldest, like, crypto podcast or something, or a generic crypto podcast. Like, we're talking like 2012 or something, or 2013, like that era kind of thing.
The OG Altcoin Daily type of thing?
Yeah, way before that. So, anyway, so I did an interview with them talking about this stuff, but we just put out this post. I sent it to you earlier. Let me throw that one up here. There's a big overhaul to Dash's privacy function coming. I wish I could give an estimate, but working on some stuff. Let's just say in the next year, right? Where privacy nerds, I'm just throwing this up on the screen, but feel free to read it at a different time. But basically, privacy nerds will understand that there's a few components of privacy, right? If you have the old school thing with like coin joins and stuff, has been you have a very transparent transaction graph or whatever, and then you use you mix funds amongst other people so that when you send it, everyone can see what came from where in theory, but they can't connect who is behind which transaction. And I mean, that's sort of like the basic of like a coin join, for example. Now, Monero in the super early days had just regular old ring signatures where you'd have, you'd have a bunch of decoy transactions and then like one real one. But as far as I know, there was no amount hiding or anything of that. Now, Adam Back, who's someone I'm not a huge fan of, but for the purposes of this, I guess maybe I'll say yes, because he developed something called, I believe, I don't remember if he exclusively developed, but he was involved in something called confidential transactions, which is, or CT as it's more commonly known, which is it's whenever you hear Monero people saying we use zero knowledge proofs today, that's kind of what they're talking about, is basically a cryptographic scheme which hides transaction amounts and balances. So now it's like, I send money to you. Everyone could see I sent a certain amount, a certain transaction to you, but no one can see how much is there or how much is in the address. And so, for reference, modern Monero is more or less a combination of ring signatures and confidential transactions. That's why they call it ring CT. And similar, I would say that Litecoin's MWeb is sort of similar to Monero's privacy function in that it combines CT, confidential transactions, with some sort of a decoy model. Although it's not decoys they're all real transactions. It's just sort of like an instant coin join, if I were to categorize it. Just like a mixing of all the transactions in the block.
Like a zero knowledge proof of all the transactions.
Yes. And so you still see all the transactions. It's just you can't tell unless you're like doing advanced analysis or whatever, which is another rabbit hole, who is sending what to whom. And so modern, I would say, those are kind of the two pillars of privacy are the hiding the amounts of like just the transaction on the blockchain privacy. There's so much else, but like you're hiding the amounts and of everything, and then you're also hiding where it's coming from and going to, or the transaction graph.
Yeah.
And so for Dash had one of the earliest integrated privacy features of any cryptocurrency. I think it was I don't know which was the original privacy coin. I've heard people say there was something called like Quark or something back in the day, or some.
Okay.
We're getting really
into obscure crypto history.
Yes, but Darkcoin, as it was known, had like this integrated coin join thing that then, when the focus became more on like a generic digital cash, rebranded to Dash, 10 years ago, right? And kept this function, kept on improving it over the years and making it better. But at the base, Dash had like a transparent blockchain that just hid the transaction graph. So in order to achieve privacy, you just have to be careful about amount and balance hiding. You have to make sure not to give too much of that stuff away. So basically what's happening is Dash is implementing confidential transactions at the protocol level. So now there will be a CT address type, kind of like you have like an MWeb address or whatever for Litecoin. And although the point of that, other than just, everyone can at least hide their balances. So if I send you a transparent address, if I just pay you, everyone can see I sent you money, but no one can see how much it's for. Other than just that basic thing, when you combine it with a coin join function, you get much better privacy, and you also severely cut down the time and complexity of like a mixing process. So then it becomes more similar to like an MWeb type thing, but you kind of do it ahead of time and then you just send later. But it's kind of in the same family now as MWeb, Monero's Ring CT, and now Dash is, I don't know what sexy name we'll come up with for this thing together, but it'll be basically the same kind of a thing.
But so that'll be on by default.
Depends on the wallet, but for sure, the Dash Pay wallet, the main one that will have that option to just have it on by default. And the thing is, the by default thing is it's a misused and tricky definition, right? As far as Monero will say, that's the only by default cryptocurrency.
That's the only kind of privacy that matters. Yeah.
Yes. Whereas Zcash, for example, Zcash shielded transactions are by default, meaning that every wallet now implements shielded transactions first. So it's like the typical way you send, but you do have an option to do transparent things. And so under that definition, I'm trying to make sure that CT is kind of the same type of a thing where it's just going to be the regular Dash address. So CT will be on by default for sure. The mixing part of that, not necessarily, at least at the beginning, although I'll see what I can get done with different wallets and things because there's some extra stuff involved with that. But so basically, yeah, that's like the big picture of what's going on.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. So when do you think that's going to be implemented? Do you have a?
So here's the thing.
Roadmap?
There's a few developers we got lined up to work on it, and we're just kind of organizing the funding thing around it. There's a possibility we could get the Dash DAO to fund it, although it's pretty, strapped for cash right now with all the different things being funded right now. We did get a commitment from a nonprofit called Power Up Privacy to entirely fund the thing. Haven't heard from them in a month or so. So it's still like the official plan is to have them finance the whole thing. But if they don't, I'm looking up all different options. And kind of in general, I'm chasing down like grants and stuff like that, because if I find stuff that Dash doesn't need, there's a lot of privacy tech out there that needs some help in terms of adoption into services. So for example, like MWeb is in, as far as I understand it, as far as like light client type things, mostly just Cake Wallet and Nexus Wallet. Is that right, or are there others right now?
Stack Wallet will be implementing it soon, apparently. Yeah, there's obviously Litecoin D, right? The Litecoin client.
The full node
Litecoin
client
Core.
thing, yeah.
And Electrum. There's an MWeb Electrum client, which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. There aren't that many at this point.
So if I find organizations that are willing to give for stuff, I've got to start looking around the space and being like, can we get Dash's privacy into like Edge Wallet and Unstoppable Wallet? And then, I got some more. How about we get MWeb into Edge, for example? What if we give them a grant if they do it faster? And just kind of because I know a lot of people in the privacy space outside of just like the Dash world. So if I do find extra grant money floating around there somewhere, I'm going to try to see if I can expand everything as to where the privacy option is the default for at least all the privacy chains in as much of the space as I can.
Yeah. And I mean, hopefully the regulations will adapt to be more inclusive of privacy stuff too, because we've had issues on the MWeb side where people, were sending amounts to Coinbase or Binance, and they basically held on to coins that came from MWeb, right? So with Litecoin, there's the option to if you have coins in MWeb, if you receive payment in MWeb, you can send it back to the transparent layer of the network, and then you should be fine. Although don't quote me on that. Certainly test with small amounts if you do that. I mean, there's a possibility that colored coins will always be banished. Who knows? But certainly things that come from the MWeb address are being blocked systematically now on major exchanges. And it's kind of a huge concern, right? And potentially one of the reasons why the price of Litecoin has been so low, because around these concerns of the privacy nature of the protocol now. there was an exchange in South Korea that banned it the day or shortly after MWeb was released. And I mean, maybe it's more complex than that, because I know that in the mainstream media, there was no real, there weren't, like, Cointelegraph had an article. Was it Cointelegraph or CoinDesk? I'm not sure. Probably Cointelegraph. But the only article they have up on MWeb, I think even to this day, is the article about that South Korean exchange banning MWeb, right? Like, they didn't even, it's like, none of this like announcing MWeb on Litecoin, like, yeah, like, hooray, everybody, good job. But more like, oh, look, it's not looking good for MWeb, type of thing. When, I thought MWeb was a huge success and a huge, I guess, point of pride for the community and the foundation for sure. And David Burkett, who basically made the thing, who shoehorned Grin onto Litecoin.
And improved it, in my opinion, from what I've talked to him about it.
Improved it,
for sure.
Improved it, yeah.
Like, I think Grin, again, people please feel free to correct me, because I don't know 100%. But from my understanding, most Mimblewimble implementations, including Grin, still require you to be online to receive transactions, and that was something that Burkett said that he fixed with MWeb. He said now we don't need that.
Yeah, so exactly. You can have an MWeb address, and you don't have to be online to receive it. You just share your address, and it exists and is tied to your wallet forever. So that's pretty nice for sure. But yeah, I mean, and I guess that's kind of one of the selling points, being able to opt into it, right? Like, keeping your foot in the door with these major exchanges and not being like totally blacklisted. But like we were saying, the new administration in the States is more open to these types of things, right? Like the Tornado Cash guys got acquitted, I think.
Oh no.
Oh no,
I don't think any of them. Maybe one, I don't remember. I know Roman Storm is still raising money for his legal defense. I think the Ethereum Foundation just gave him $50,000 for that.
Okay.
I know Tornado Cash's addresses are no longer sanctioned, so now you can use Tornado Cash freely. But he still has an ongoing case. And then Alexei Pertsev, who I've had the great pleasure of meeting a few times, is still with an ankle monitor in the Netherlands, because his case, he got convicted of 5 years, sentenced to 5 years in prison.
Okay.
But he's out on bail, appealing the decision. And compared to the U.S., I kind of feel worse about that one, because the U.S. was very much of a Biden administration crackdown, whereas the Netherlands seemed to be more of just like, oh, they caught his attention. It was like a money laundering case that they just sort of viewed it as. But I hope the best for all of them. It sucks so bad that, like, all these people in prison or facing prison right now today if they did the exact same thing today, would probably all have no problems. But they're still left behind.
Yeah. Hopefully they get out, and because they didn't actually do any money laundering themselves. I mean, right? They just facilitated. Yeah, it's really shitty what happened to them. But yeah, so hopefully with this new administration, at least in the United States, we're going to see less of these crackdowns, these blanket crackdowns on privacy chains, right? Certainly Litecoin's been going on for, like, 13 years now? It's one of, like, the oldest coins out there. I think the second or third altcoin.
Yeah, I would call it the second oldest active chain.
Right.
Because other, like, Namecoin's still around. Some of these other ones might still be like zombie chains moving along.
Like,
but it's
Fairbricks, right? Like, I don't know if you heard about that, but that was Charlie's first blockchain before Litecoin.
I never heard about that in my life.
Yeah, no, and apparently, so, like, it died, but there's apparently one dude that kept mining it this whole time, and so the chain is seeing a resurgence now on some other markets, and is getting stronger. So that might be the second oldest one that's still being use. I don't know, but
Yeah, but as far as like that's considered still like in business, like still
right
exists.
on
It,
exchange on major exchanges, like
yeah.
Namecoin's use case has died, unfortunately,
Hmm.
right? As like a DNS alternative or like an open source
Hmm.
decentralized DNS system. Um, like those .bit domains, if they're still being used, are only being used by you know what's it called, malware teams,
Yeah.
right?
No, I don't remember. Did Satoshi leave before Litecoin came out?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So, but he did talk about Namecoin. So, like,
Right.
Namecoin, I think, is the only alt that existed that Satoshi knew about and talked about during that time, at least. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, it is like Bitcoin and then Litecoin and then like a wasteland until you hit the class of 2014, where
Hmm.
there's just a few that are still. I mean, obviously Monero and Dash are still out there kicking. Digibyte's like not. It's still like it's not like its heyday is kind of over. Maybe again, I don't want to sound like I'm talking shit. I just from my understanding, but it's still active, and I still like I've done space with the Digibyte account like this month, and there's still a
Hmm.
community. So it's kind of like those three, and then was it Ethereum 2015 or something?
Yes, 2015, probably
Yeah.
the latest 2016, but yeah.
And then Zcash I think was 2016 or something. So like there's like a few of the older, but like the class of 2014 is like just a couple, but like you could count
Mhm.
in it's like probably 10 blockchains that are like 10 major blockchains that are still around and relevant that are Zcash age or older, you know.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
really small class there.
Yeah. What is the trading volume for these coins as well? Like, I mean,
Hmm.
Zcash is doing pretty well. I think Monero as
Yeah, these
well, where
days.
it's being traded. Yeah. Litecoin's doing all right for what it's worth.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, definitely. It's like the stars of the show, right? It's like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, perhaps.
Yeah. Although I do know Dogecoin people who've been there since the beginning
Hmm.
and who still use Dogecoin, have Dogecoin wallets today.
Yeah.
And for all practical purposes on a network level, it's kind of like a dead project, which is wild
Oh,
with the
really?
market capitalization. It's like, oh, the wallet doesn't work anymore because it never got updated to work on the later Android OSs, or there's just weird stuff like that. Like just the tech is in shambles as far as like the, and that's wild to have like a many billion-dollar project that's like in shambles like that. Like it, and here's the thing, I have a lot of like respect for the WoW, right? For Dogecoin's place in history and the fun community and the merge mining and all the fun stuff. So I don't want to talk shit about it really, but at the same time, it's kind of a sign of the times that it's still where it's at as far as how early we are.
I mean, no one's using it. Like, no one's using
Yeah.
it. Even Bitcoin, like no, like if you look at the market cap,
Hmm.
hardly anyone uses this stuff. Um,
Yeah.
it may have mass penetration in the investment world, but like in retail, we're still early days, in my opinion. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, like I
Very
know there's
early.
like, was it the Dogecoin tipping wallet there, the My Dogecoin wallet,
Hmm.
Dogecoin OS, which is working on some cool stuff. But yeah, you're right. I mean, look, there's a lot to want for in wallets, and
Yeah.
um, I mean, frankly, my favorite wallet is Cake Wallet these days. I
Hmm.
think it's just they've done an excellent job in keeping up with tech and the privacy aspect of things. They implemented Bitcoin silent payments, right? And I think, well, they were the first or close to the first to implement MWeb on Litecoin.
Hmm.
Um, they've got that Nano GPT thing built into it, right?
Hmm.
Which is pretty cool. But yeah, there's definitely room for growth in that sector, big time.
Yeah, and that's one of the things with like, for me, like Edge has been one of the only multi-coin wallets like worth keeping around kind of thing. And
Yeah.
Edge, like I had Cake, I think, at one point. I'm pretty sure I used it, but not much. But Cake is similar to Edge in that it's a multi-coin wallet that actually has like features and stuff. The difference, Edge is much more of it's like a big fish kind of thing in terms of like it has way more assets. It's kind of much more mainstream, and therefore it's not maybe as much attention to detail on the little things for each chain. But I mean, they do have like Monero. I think they were the first. No, they were like the second mobile wallet to successfully, one of the very early ones to successfully implement Monero, where it was very hard. And the Jax wallet from back in the day, if anyone remembers those guys,
Oh wow. Yeah.
was working on, and that's a Canadian company, right? Well, at least it was. They were working on a Monero implementation. They just gave up at some point. And I think Koinomi might have been one of the first ones to add it, or Edge. I don't remember which of the two, but one of the two was.
Edge does Edge enable swaps as well? I think they do, right?
Yes, they have Thorchain
Yeah.
and Maya Protocol backend for that stuff.
Right.
And so they have a lot of stuff. I kind of feel like Cake is a little bit more focused on like a spending type wallet, like an actual, like the kind of stuff that I like to use wallets for. Whereas Edge
Yeah.
is like kind of that, but also a portfolio app sort of. And
Right.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying. With Cake, each of your wallets has a separate seed phrase, right? For each chain, you've got like your Bitcoin,
Damn.
your Litecoin.
Yeah, well,
Monero, it's a different. You can switch between them, but you can't see like a global view of your portfolio. Let's say.
Yeah, Edge is the same way in that every crypto you have has a separate seed phrase if you want to, but they have like a username password recovery thing that,
Right.
that does the whole thing. So if you want to
Right,
back
right.
it up, like you can't. There's no one general seed phrase for everything.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
No, for sure. Look, a lot of room to grow. I think, yeah, you're right. Having an app that can do everything, like do pay, like to buy gift cards, for example, right? Like that's important. Being able to use your wallet to check out. I think you want to talk about Flexa at some point as well. Maybe now's a good time to touch on
Well,
that.
just right before I jump into that, I just threw up on the screen the post that 84 million made. There's a picture of the privacy panel at the Litecoin Summit, and then there's
Yeah.
me, and there's David Burkett, the Litecoin MWeb developer, who also has that Liberty shirt on that I have that I like from the podcast, for 84 million podcast. And then there's the guy working on full chain membership proofs for Monero. Then of course Seth from Cake Wallet, and then Dr. Cap from the Basic Swap Decks.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's funny. I've known Dr. Cap for. He was one of the very first guests on this podcast, as far as like
Oh, wow.
interview guests, like 2021 or something like that. So I've kind of known him for a while here or there, because Particle is the blockchain or the project that Basic Swap Decks, I don't know if it runs on, but at least is associated with. Again, I haven't kept up, but and I knew some people in the Particle universe for a while, and there we go. That's just kind of how that worked. But anyway, just a very fun picture of like a bunch of privacy people from a bunch of different projects. Which, by the way, Hilawi in the live chat, I don't know if you know Hilawi, but if you don't, he's a great guy. He just said MWeb usage is taking off. So that's always good.
Yeah,
Anyway,
if you go
yeah.
check out the MWeb Explorer, you could see, I think, I know what we're at, like, hold on. So, how many Litecoin are in MWeb right now? 155,000.
155,000 what addresses total?
Litecoin.
Oh, and so that's
Litecoin in the extension block.
what percentage of the supply?
Oh my god.
It's because 84 million is the eventual supply, right? I have no like.
Yeah.
I haven't kept up at all with this stuff. Maybe I should just do some of this math. According to CoinGecko, the supply is 76 million. So it's like, I don't know. It's like, it's a small percentage, but it's a growing percentage.
It's something, and it's increasing. If you look at the graph there, at some point someone dumped like, hold on, let's go 3 years out. Yeah, someone dumped like, what was that 364,000 Litecoin in MWeb? and then pulled it out. Like, are you on the Litecoin MWeb Explorer? You could
No,
pull that
not
up
right now.
if you want. I mean, I'll send it to you here on X. And if you look at the graph on the main page, the Litecoin MWeb balance, there's a little graph button there.
Mm-hmm.
And you extrapolate it to like all time. You choose like the higher time frame.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see that someone dumped like 364. No, at some point the all-time high was 364,000 Litecoin. I guess as a proof of concept, as someone tested it, they put their money where their mouth was, you know.
Mm-hmm. Let me find the balance chart here, and I'm going to put it on the screen. So, yeah, there's this big dump right there. And my balance in USD is, what, 13 million? So, and to be fair, that is larger than the market caps of some privacy coins. So, like, for example, let me check on... yeah, Pivx's market cap is 11 million. And Firo, which I like those guys, is 12 right now. So those are two, actually pretty good privacy projects, right? And the MWeb still has more value, more fiat value, I should say, in there than those. So
Right.
that's not nothing, right? That's something decent, and the growth is what you want to see.
Check out like I see you're on the 3-month. Check out like the all, like if you click on all there, the whole, like for the time frame.
Yeah, that's
You'll see what I'm talking about.
You do see it go up, and yeah, that dump was crazy because it went up and down.
That, like, when I saw that happening, dude, I was beside myself. I was like, who the hell is this guy? Like, what
It's
a
Charlie
flex.
messing around.
Yeah, right. I mean, who else could it be? Well,
Yes,
could be a bunch of people, but none of whom I want to name.
of course.
Yeah.
One thing I'll point out before you get to the Flexus stuff, something. It's funny. I got distracted because someone was pointing out the fun stuff in the live chat of this show, but I'll get to that in a second. We're talking about the delisting stuff, which typically Litecoin has been it's been the thing that has been the strongest, most listed crypto out there that's not called Bitcoin, and that's kind of like a very strategic move, I guess, on Charlie's part, and
The foundation, yeah.
yeah. Now, the thing with the privacy stuff, and this is where it gets more strategic with the privacy stuff and less just about tech good, build best tech. In the early days of privacy, anything that had a P word next to it was like, you just liked it, but then when people started to crack down, it was the P word itself was like the trigger. If you're a privacy coin, you get delisted. Like Verge.
Yeah.
Verge, Dogecoin Dark, as it was known before, it's literally, the word Verge, what that means? Like, it's literally a dumb joke. It doesn't have any privacy function. It had some sort of IP address obfuscation thing, like maybe, I don't remember exactly if it's Dandelion ++ or something like that, but it didn't have any actual transaction graph or amount or no actual on-chain privacy, but then it got delisted because of the word. And I remember the previous people involved with Dash Core Group were talking to lots of exchanges and regulators during the time when privacy got hot, and like hot in not a good way. And a lot of people just said, like, if it has that word, we got to delist, especially because translated to some Asian languages, it sounds really bad and they just don't like it. And so it's like, well, can we just call it something else? So technically today, Dash's CoinJoin implementation, which was called Dark Send in the 2014 era, and then got renamed to just Private Send, got debranded a few years ago. Like, we're now just called CoinJoin. Some people still call it Private Send. You can call it whatever the hell you want. But it was like an attempt to let's just take out the P word and we'll see if people will be nice to us. And that didn't really work out. But the point is, now there's a very much more, I wouldn't say there's clarity on privacy, but we're getting close to it.
It's turning mainstream, man. Like,
yes.
Like we were talking about beforehand, PewDiePie Did a whole episode on Graphene OS. Now he's
Yeah.
detooling himself, right?
It's insane.
Uh,
Yeah, I'll definitely throw that up later. But the thing with this, the privacy thing is it's kind of gotten segmented into some things. It's actually becoming two different definitions. First of all, the legally in the U.S. there's never been any kind of ban on privacy technology and cryptocurrencies or anything like that. There's never been anything real. There has been just the OFAC sanctioned Tornado Cash specifically, and there have been, like, if you're suspected of it, aiding money laundering, there's some other stuff, but actually using something like Monero or Zcash or whatever has never been illegal at all in any way, shape, or form in the US. Now in Europe with MiCA, there are some very specific regulations around privacy. First of all, you can do whatever you want if you're doing self-custody wallets. You do whatever you want. Open source tech, you do whatever you want. Anonymous custodial crypto accounts are banned, which means you cannot have an exchange that's not KYC'd and doxed, even if it's crypto only, doesn't touch fiat. If they're custodying your money, they need to identify you. But also, that means they cannot receive anonymous deposits. And this is where it gets interesting. This is the exact reason why Monero is delisted in all the European exchanges, is because they have to be able to, if you deposit money to an exchange, they have to be able to prove origin of the funds. It's not from an anonymous source. And
Right.
so they need to be able to see the address it came from to go in there, and they need to be able to have you verify that that's your address under your control, which is
And
very...
and like sending them an invoice or something or a receipt
Yes.
for it isn't enough.
No, you have to. There has to be a verifiable on the blockchain address that they could see, and
Yeah.
then in case someone sent money to a random exchange address, if they can't identify whoever sent it, they need to be able to refund it. And so, from a Bitcoin, and let's just say Bitcoin and Dash using CoinJoin, for example, standpoint, this is pretty straightforward, right? You can just say, you can do whatever you want. You deposit, and they're like, whoa, where did that money come from? And they're like, no, it's me. These addresses are under my control. Let me prove it to you by signing a message. And then you're fine. The problem with Monero in particular is you can receive a payment and you're like, it came from fucking these decoys or whatever. And you can't be like, well, which one is this your address? It's like, well, which one? And it's decoys, and the view key doesn't really help enough for them. But more importantly, you cannot then refund to, like, if I sent Monero to an exchange, no one would know where it came from, and now they'd have this hot potato of illegal money they can't do anything with. So that's why Zcash and some other ones also got in trouble, but they devised, I think it was the Firo team first devised this, and then it kind of got onto PivX as well as Zcash, something called an exchange-only address, which can only receive funds from a transparent address. So you have fully shielded funds. You have to send to a transparent address, and then from there goes to the exchange. So it came from nowhere to this address, and then to the exchange. So the exchange says, "Where did that come from?" And like, "Oh, this address. I prove that I own it," and then you're all good. So
This is the way it should be. Like,
yeah, but
In a
Monero
perfect world.
can't do that. Like, technically, like, there's a technical limitation behind that, and I would also say there's a social limitation behind doing any kind of technological thing to make anything compliant easier. Like, even if they wanted to, just they lose so much street cred, they would lose market share. They would not do something like that. So they're gone. Now, I don't know exactly. I don't know. Here's the thing: in Europe, I would have to talk to the lawyer we've been talking to about this just casually. I'm not sure where MWeb stands legally in Europe. I do know that, like, because Litecoin, like, the privacy part of Litecoin just sort of isn't even on most people's radar at all. So people don't think of it as a privacy coin. So therefore, it's probably fine for now. But if you send an MWeb transaction to me with a regular Litecoin address, first of all, can I refund you that without any interaction with you whatsoever? Do you
No.
know? No?
No.
So that, and it does show on the blockchain. Again, it's a soft fork, right? So like if it does show on the blockchain that it came from a regular Litecoin address somewhere, but it's the one big MWeb address, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just like, I guess it's like, where did it come from? It's like it came from this one address. Do you own the MWeb? It's like, well, not really, but it's not a thing where you can then ban. I don't think Litecoin will be banned in Europe. I just think that MWeb users will just have to learn the hard way that they can't send straight from the MWeb. You know, they have to send to a different address first. It's so that's like the Mika thing, because I've had to deal with lawyers over this shit, you know, recently, and I would say there's the number one design consideration when doing the Dash overhaul the way we're doing it was, of course, the most benefit for the least amount of work, like the smallest lift and then the most overall benefit, and you get to just improve the existing functionality. The second consideration was, how can we make this first step in this new direction less like risky? And if you coin joined confidential transactions funds, they can still be, they still come from an address, and they can still be refunded to that address. You could still sign ownership over that address. And so it wouldn't be a problem in Europe, for example. Beyond that, there is a new trend emerging where PayPal, for their stablecoin, is doing confidential transactions. So is USDC for Circles. They also have a confidential assets framework that they kind of built in. I think.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, all this stuff is coming. Again, this is like I mentioned that at Consensus last year, I saw PayPal was advertising their Solana stablecoin, and I saw in the fine print confidential transfers. I'm like, what's this? And looked up their white paper, and it just says that the balances and amounts are hidden for, you know, whatever. And I mentioned then, I said, PayPal might be leading the mass adoption privacy charge, and like everyone like freaked out at me because, you know, whatever, they don't read like I do. But it turns out that there's a lot of attention to the details where, for example, in the USDC kind of the Circle confidential ERC20 framework, they actually start to go into a difference. They say that they sort of split the concept of privacy into two things, which are confidentiality and anonymity. Anonymity is like evil dark web stuff that like no one has a right to necessarily. Again, we're talking like the most regulated type normie standpoint, right? That it's like, that's like hardcore stuff. Confidentiality is a different concept, which is basic confidentiality of funds and things like that everyone in every context should have a right to, basically.
Which we're honestly used to already with the current banking system.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think that hidden amounts, again, using confidential transactions, the Atom Back technology from way back in the day, is becoming kind of the standard. And then I did confirm it with the lawyer about that the term confidential is a much more acceptable, palpable term, into where the legal opinion letter on Dash for Mika and the EU and all that stuff uses the actual combination of words confidential transactions to describe the CoinJoin functionality, because that's the most normie friendly way of saying this stuff, the most regulator friendly way of saying things.
And it is accurate as
Yes.
well.
It's funny that with these little playing footsie with these words is kind of like a thing, but it is kind of interesting that I do think that like privacy is not a binary, obviously, but it's going to become more apparent as we start to move towards mass adoption and things like that, because I think there will be different levels of privacy on a technological scale, to where we'll have like, you know, something like, first of all, confidential transactions will probably be the norm for every financial transfer at some point in crypto. maybe I don't know if that's 5 years from now or 10 years from now, but I would say that that's the way it's going. And then as far as like a CT plus obfuscation, like MWeb, like Monero currently does, like Dash is moving into that thing. I don't know what that'll be. Is that going to be like also acceptable, but it's just not weapons grade enough to where like the CIA can't crack it, and so therefore that's fine. But then when you do get to like the super ZK level thing, then maybe that will be banned. I have no idea. I do think that generally privacy is going to be, as in the actual technology privacy, is going to be more and more accepted, including like the ZK stuff. That's just my gut feeling.
For sure.
Do you? I mean, obviously that's the optimistic feeling. Do you have that optimistic take? Do you think?
Yeah, well, and I think that there should be maybe two classes of wallets, right? You'll have like wallets that are used by people, owned by persons actually, which are held to a certain standard, and then wallets that are held by corporations, right? Which shouldn't be allowed to use all these features, or maybe they should. You know what? Maybe it's even more important for them to remain competitive, right? To have some sort of secrecy. Maybe the big corporations should be pushing for this tech as much as the people should be. And what about AIs, man? What happens when AI agents start using crypto to make moves? Should they be held to the same? Should they be granted the same amount of privacy, or would it be better if we had some transparency as to what their actions are?
Yeah, I mean, obviously philosophically, just on the side of radical freedom for the people to do whatever they want, including have the most high level of privacy. And then once you have that, then it's like, what do you do about that is something else. Like, for example, if someone says, I don't want to loan you a house unless I don't want to give you a mortgage unless you can prove to me that you did not get stolen money. Like, I just
Right.
personally don't want to do this, rent to a criminal or something like that. And like, that.
Well, so exchanges already do that, right? Like when
Yes.
you deposit a large amount, they ask you the source of your funds, right? So
Mm-hmm.
KYC exchanges are already filling that role. You heard about that? Was it the Federal Housing Association or whatever?
Yeah.
They're talking about accepting crypto as a collateral, or at least an asset before approving someone for a loan for a mortgage. That's pretty rad. But I think it comes with a few caveats, right? From what
Like,
I
it has to be
understand,
custodial
it has to be custodial, and you won't be able to spend it for the term of the mortgage.
for the entire term.
I think so. I mean, you would imagine that, like, if it appreciates, you could probably pay your mortgage off immediately, right? And like keep whatever's left over.
Yeah, I'll have to actually dive into the details of that, which I haven't. I've just headlines.
Yeah, it came out like yesterday, right? Like it's pretty new.
like
development.
two days ago, maybe
2 days ago?
but
Yeah.
3 days. I don't remember when I post 2 to 3 days, something like that. But because I know in the U.S. at least, when you get a mortgage, you do, or if you do have to show bank statements, as far as like you have to show that you have the money.
Yeah.
You have a certain amount of money in the bank, but also that you have a certain income. And those are like, if you, let's just say you earn entirely crypto from like randos donating on the internet, as long as you file taxes and you have like an LLC or something that you file a tax return that proves you have this much income, that's the income part. And so say you also just have no bank, no fiat, to me it would make sense that you could just get a Coinbase account, dump a sad chunk of your crypto onto Coinbase, and then say, look, can you give me the mortgage? And then as soon as they do, then you could take it off, assuming Coinbase doesn't restrict you for whatever nonsense they're doing. But that's my understanding how that could work out. So if it's worse than that, that would be sad. But I'll have to read into it.
Either way, I think it's a big step forward for crypto, like huge.
Yes.
And definitely gives me FOMO as a Canadian.
But listen, it's going to happen. Canada will come along. I interviewed Jerry from Bitcoin Bay, who and a bunch of stuff. He runs some Toronto area crypto meetups. He's like a Bitcoin Cash guy, and I put out that podcast on Wednesday, I think, on this channel. So if you want to go, it's like a 20-minute chat. But basically, a lot of that stuff, he's just like talk about how so much it sucks to be in tech in Canada. About if everyone leaves to go to the U.S. or something on like tech and crypto. But anyway,
just for the taxes. I mean, yeah.
And then people leave from the U.S. to go to other places like Dubai for the taxes, and
the grass is always greener, I guess.
Yeah, of course. But as far as like the mortgage type thing, I know there's a friend of mine, Mark Warden, he's a realtor in New Hampshire, and he has sold several houses for crypto in New Hampshire in the early days. We're talking about like 2013, 2014, and a few, like a year or so ago, he comes to some crypto meetup. I'm like, hey, Mark, I haven't seen you. What's going on? And he has this printed out piece of paper that's like, he printed out like a blockchain.com, like block explorer thing. And he's just like, hey, so this guy paid a down payment for his house in Bitcoin. And like, at what point, like, how do we decide that it's final? Like, do we wait for confirmations? How many confirmations? And like, and so I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. And so we had to like tech support that. But basically, living off of crypto, as far as the big hurdle has been like bills and housing. And housing, you either had to like rent and just have a deal with your landlord or someone else on your behalf to just pay crypto. But to own a house, it's like you either were like a living on cash bum, was kind of my experience for a long time, or you had to be just rich enough to just cash buy, drop a few Bitcoin and buy a house, right? Or a couple hundred Bitcoin back in the day, but like
back then,
yeah. But in between, like the regular person was just left out, and now the regular person is enabled. The super rich and the super poor are always going to be fine, or the rich and the poor, but it's like the middle class can now use crypto, which is great news.
Yeah, man. No, the future is bright for crypto. It's looking a lot better. And that bill or order, whatever the heck it is, I mean, hopefully more people, more countries follow that example, more banks. Probably if some banks are comfortable with it, and there's a market and a way to profit off of it, other banks globally will jump on board.
Yeah, so you mentioned Flexa. So first of all, do you have a hard out at any time? We'll be going for
not specifically.
Okay.
No.
Well, we won't be going for much longer, but I just want to be careful in case you're going to get yelled at by someone. But more than usual. But
No, I'm good.
so you mentioned Flexa. So I sent over. I'm going to see if it's on the screen here. Back in 2019, I guess, at Consensus in New York City, the Winklevoss twins are there paying at a Starbucks with Flexa. And that was kind of a big hyped thing back in the day. And then no one just heard anything from Flexa, like as far as like giant headlines, for many, many years. And then they had the Spedin app that was used as like, it's being deprecated at some point, but it's kind of a demo app for this Flexa system. And then recently they're moving everyone into the SDK territory, where now these apps like Zashi or Nexus Wallet and stuff integrate the Flexa SDK, so where now you can go and scan a Flex code at a lot of these merchants, a bunch of merchants in the US and hopefully in other countries at some point, and then it will like you'll automatically pay from your non-custodial wallet and pay for good service. It's pretty seamless. So
Right.
Did you want to say anything particular about that?
No, I mean, I haven't used it personally, but it looks like a cool thing. I know they're often they're at the Litecoin Summit 2 years in a row, I think, and maybe they had something to announce with the Nexus Wallet. Although I'm not sure if it's implemented at the moment. Again, I don't think it, and maybe you know this, but I don't think it works in Canada.
I don't think it does.
Right.
But it will at some point. So, so here's the the background of some of this is Flexa is trying to basically. I'll just break down like this as much secret sauce on Flexa. Now, as far as I understand, like nothing of this is explicitly like all this stuff is stuff you can glean from public info, right? So it's not like even though almost no one knows some of the stuff I'll be talking about, it's not like it's secret either. So Flexa is a payment protocol kind of to facilitate instant transaction settlement through a token collateralization thing. So chains like Dash have instant transaction settlement. Most you have to wait for blockchain confirmations, but a zeroconf is kind of good enough from a lot of search situations. But to just get rid of that, that uncertainty thing, and also to kind of deal with all chains, what Flexa does is they have a token pool of the AMP token that collateralizes the payments. So let's just say I send Bitcoin. I want to pay with Bitcoin at a coffee shop. So I spend like 80 cents for a fee for like $1 coffee, whatever Bitcoin problems you got, and it's settled right away. And so in the back end, of course, it takes a while for the Bitcoin to actually be confirmed on chain, and it's collateralized by this money, these tokens. So if something happened, if there was a double spend or something, then those tokens would be sold to pay the merchant. So that's kind of the core thing that Flexa does. Now, what else their way they've gotten integrated is they've gotten integrated into a bunch of point of sale software things directly into merchants. Now, I can tell based on previous experience using this and being in the space for a long time, at one point at least, they were using gift card rails for this. So where if you pay at Dunkin' Donuts, what would happen is they would especially with the, don't want to get too much into those weeds, but basically what happened is you would pay, they would instantly buy or provision a gift credit in the exact amount that you had and just provide it to
the invoice.
merchant. Yes, and it's kind of like if you remember CakePay had a thing in their wallet for a while it was like a Dash funded company called Ionia that did a thing called Dash Direct, which then CakePay used for this. Ionia is not in crypto anymore, but there's a new integration in the Dash wallet that does kind of the exact same thing. But it is in the customer actually touches the gift code. As in you buy a gift code and then it's there and then you give it to the merchant. Whereas with Flexa, it just all happened automatically. Yes, but it was still a gift card rail for a while. My understanding is today it's not anymore, or it's
like it's its own network.
Yes,
and
it's a direct settlement network type thing.
Wow.
Now, however, if you do ever come to an area that's supported by Flexa and use it, you would ask the merchant, you would say paying with a gift code or gift card, even though it's not technically true because the point of sale, this stuff I learned not within the last month or so, right? The merchant has like two different ways of inputting payment information. It's the card reader or the cash drawer, I guess, and it's the gift card scanner. So even though it's not a gift card, it's the same scanner that they would use to scan a gift card is what scans the Flex code and gets you in there. So just like a small tip of like how you say it, you have to sort of lie and say it's a gift card when it's not. But
so that's like at the Starbucks, they've got like a Starbucks QR code gift card that they'll spend. Yes. But so you have to put the exact amount in. You type it on your phone.
Well,
and it
actually you don't. That's
you
the
don't.
difference with as far as I know, like the Dash integration, the Dash wallet that's like a gift card where you literally buy a gift card. You say you have a big Starbucks order at $23.79. You'd put $23.79, hit buy, and you get a gift card for $23.79. You turn around, they get it. That's a gift card rail. That's how.
But you have to say it's for a Starbucks.
Well, that's at a Starbucks. You literally buy. This is, and I'm sorry, I'm confusing a few different things here. I'm mentioning a few different things. That's the gift card integration that's in the Dash wallet right now. Mm-hmm. Now, Flexa, you just hit Starbucks, and you turn around the phone, and they scan the QR code or the Flex code, and it just you don't have to enter the amount at all. That's like not
Okay, just
not on
pulls
the
it,
user
yeah.
side of things. So that would be your thing. You'd open up the app, and you just open up, say, Sheets is like a gas station that got added to Flexa relatively recently. You hit Sheets, turn it around, they scan it, and then it just does it automatically.
Oh, cool.
So that's how it works. You have to sign up with like an email address and a name, I think. It's not KYC, but I think they limit you to a certain spending level per week in order to not go over like, not
In order to remain legal, yeah, to not trigger any flags or.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's much lower than gift cards. Like I think a gift card provider can sell you like 10 grand worth of gift cards in a week and not have to KYC or something. But for
Okay.
this payment mechanism, it's like, well, it's like 700 a week or something. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly what
So
it
like
is.
day-to-day transactions, like
Yeah.
small shopping sprees or something. Yeah.
Yes. So that's like the giant overview. Now, it's funny, the last time I did use Flexa was, funny enough, in Canada because it was at Consensus. The acronym Foundation, which is a foundation spun off from Flexa, it's its own thing now,
Okay.
was doing this launch where they recreated a 90s strip mall in Consensus where they had a Blockbuster video called like Blockchain Video. And
Oh, yeah, that's what that was. Because I saw a
Yeah.
bunch of people taking pictures. Yeah.
I still have this awesome poster from here. The All
Aw.
Doge Go to Heaven.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Nostalgia. They really went crazy on like the details. But I guess the point is they had these blockchain video branded NFC cards that provided by a company called Burner, which it's an NFC hardware wallet basically. And so you can load them with crypto, and then you tap it to your phone, and then it opens up in the browser, and then you can just use it as a wallet. But unlike just a straight up hardware wallet, you can also do NFC payments with it. So they hooked it up to the Flexa infrastructure, so where you have a completely offline physical crypto card, not a bank card, no banking and fiat in there, just like a literal hardware wallet that you just tap to a Flexa terminal, and it would automatically process the payment. And there you go. And they got, I think, 1,100 people paying in crypto at Consensus,
No
doing
kidding.
like buying like a manicure at the nail salon where they had a real nail tech come in, buying posters like that, buying for like a few cents that they gave to people, by the way, but they still like proof of concept and like did the whole thing. So like Flex has been, this is the reason this stuff has taken 6 years since the Winklevoss twins did that demo. They've just been working on all this crazy stuff that's like,
Now, did the Winklevoss twins start Flexa? Or are they backing it somehow? Or
They must have. I would have to look into that. I think that I guess they would have to be either an investor, or Flexa might have had some sort of partnership with Gemini, their exchange, to do some things with liquidity. So it's one or the other.
okay.
Probably. I don't actually know. So, but basically, this has been in the works for an extremely long time. Like all these kinds of things, and they're now everything's coming together at the end. And
It's crazy because like back in the early days, people were just hounding all retailers, right? Like Newegg, was that Amazon competitor Overstock?
yes,
Yeah, to accept Bitcoin, right? And that was the mission for the Bitcoiners. And these days, I mean, the Bitcoiners have kind of abandoned that in a sense, and it's left to other smaller third parties to try to accomplish this peer-to-peer economy, crypto economy.
yeah. And now it's like it's becoming so much more like institutional, I guess, is the right. I don't know the right way of saying it, but it's coming together. It's a good way. So now there's still obviously the BTC Pay server type route, which is much more, it's a peer-to-peer route. I really believe that needs to continue. But like the stuff that where average people won't use this shit, like that stuff is now starting to get to where they will.
Yeah.
And so Flexa, this is before, like I only was doing full-time Dash stuff since January of last year, right? Before my time, Flexa awarded Dash a grant of AMP tokens to integrate Flexa into the Dash wallet. and then like nothing happened out of that. And like I did it, so when I was one of my first things I did when I got to work last year is I called them up and tried to figure it out. And basically, some nondescript stuff that I'm sure we'll mention later. Basically, no one had chased up the integration, and there was some things blocking the integration. So I kind of figured out the business side of things, and so at some point they've pretty heavily said at some point Dash is getting into Flexa. I would say pretty confidently this year, although it's not in my hands, right? And yeah, and then integrating into the Dash Pay wallet as another option for payments. So just a lot of stuff is coming together all at once for that's why I've kind of said last cycle, like 2021 era or so, I said that this cycle would be the early majority adoption cycle. And next cycle, as in the one that'll be 4 or 5 years from now, will be the early mass adoption cycle. Would you consider, based on like the freaking president of the U.S. and all his shitcoinery and like all the stuff that's been going on, would you consider it to be an early majority adoption cycle this time? You think I was right? You can tell me I was wrong on my own show. I don't mind that at all. But just what do you actually think?
I mean, I think that, so given his shitcoinery, like that, for me, was a huge disappointment. And if there's a silver lining, it'll be that they do create some kind of regulatory structure for projects to follow, right? And if that happens, and then the banks get involved, all these fintech and quant finance companies start to play ball with crypto, yeah, we can see greater adoption. I still feel that nobody is using it, and I think it's because retail is poorly served. People kind of want to hodl. I think Bitcoiners are incentivized to hodl, although maybe not. Certainly, I don't know. I'm personally waiting for Litecoin season, altcoin season, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I feel like it hasn't been a real bull market. Like I'm not getting the same bull market vibes that I used to get like in 2020. And where I'm from in Canada, like nobody's talking about it. Nobody really cares about it. And there's a large group of people that are kind of, because unfortunately it's crypto's become a partisan topic, right? And people that are very liberal, which in Canada is generally much more liberal than anywhere in the States, except for like liberal in New York and Vermont, whatever. California, I think it's not something that people even want, and they see it as some kind of an evil thing, right? So yeah, from my perspective up here, I'm still waiting for the mass adoption phase, and I think it's going to come. Like I said, with time, with maturity of these tools and these products, and with more understanding, and hopefully like less of a partisan spin on the whole thing, we'll see some adoption.
Yeah, it's fun. Like, I think in places like the U.S., possibly Canada by then, we'll see. 5 years from now, at a random store, you will see someone paying crypto once in a while. It's not going to be 20% of payments. It's not going to be 10%. But do you remember when like Apple Pay came out first and Google Pay and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Then you'd see like a person use it, but it was like, oh, who's that dude? And it happened, right? The stores accepted it, but it just was very rare. In fact, actually, I remember one time there's a local French bakery close by, Maison Navarre, which has accepted a bunch of cryptos. They do take Litecoin as well, by the way. So if you're ever in town, you should check it out. They were taking crypto for a long time, and I do remember one time I went and I paid with Dash. I said, "Can I pay with crypto?" Sure. And then they did that, and the guy behind me was like, "Can I pay with Apple Pay?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't know how to do that yet." And it was funny how like in this tiny microcosm of the world, crypto is more known to this business than Apple Pay, right? For example. But I think we'll get to the early Apple Pay thing in 5 years where it won't be like completely unheard of to see someone pay with crypto at a random place in say the US or Western Europe or Dubai or like probably Canada or stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, no, here in Canada, we had the whole NFC tap to pay thing pretty early on. Here we don't swipe our credit cards. Everything's either pin based or tap, right? We haven't swiped for a credit card transaction in like 20 years or something.
I have to say I'm a little bit jealous.
It's not bad. Yeah.
Because so I had a card up until like a proper bank card up until middle of 2016, right? And haven't really used the banking system since then. I started using cards of some kind again, like a couple years ago when I figured out you could add to like a tap and pay thing, like buy some anonymous card with Bitrefill or something and put it on there and kind of do that.
Right.
And so for me, tap specifically through Google Pay has been like my like entry point back into the world, as it were, while still being completely living on crypto, unbanked and stuff. And
Yeah, it's unburdened you, right, of having to think about it. Yeah.
it's helped fill in some gaps for sure, where I don't have to like, make side deals with people or something like that. But the most places in the U.S., it was like rare that I'd find a tap thing that worked at the beginning. It was so embarrassing because then I would travel Europe, everywhere. Everyone taps everywhere in Europe. In Dubai, everyone taps. And then still like a lot of places in New Hampshire, for example, did not have a tap and pay thing. Like where I'd go to get like my vehicle serviced, the auto repair shop. I just like over the years I would have to like have some like cash from like a peer-to-peer selling thing that I'd go to these guys for. I did have a mechanic who took crypto at one point, but then he retired. And I was like, okay, well, got to figure it out. Anyway,
It worked out well for him.
yeah, well, I don't think he got enough of my stuff to do that, but I did go. I was back there this week, and they had a tap terminal, and I always look now. I'm always very like looking at what they got. And then I actually asked them, oh, look, you got a nice new thing there. And they're like, yeah, well, our bank literally said that the old one that we were using, that it would stop working in like 2 weeks, so we had to buy something. And
Oh,
this is,
nice.
like,
Okay.
literally at the last moment. And so there's a lot of these like really old places that have like one of those old like doesn't even have a digital screen, kind of like card reader machines that just don't want to upgrade, and they're finally starting to have to get a little thing. So
Nice.
but like for example, I know a lot of people who still swipe. Not really. I know a lot of people still use the chip. The insert with the chip thing. They don't do the tap. And I'm having
The chip is a lot better. I mean, the chip is secure, at least.
Yeah, but the other thing is in like restaurants and things. For the most part, overwhelmingly in the U.S., any place that has table service will bring you a little booklet with like your bill that you're supposed to put your card in. And so if I have a digital card and then it's just like, how can I use my watch here? And then, sorry, we don't know how. And,
Right.
there's always
Yeah,
a
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Whereas in other countries, so I was able to use, crypto adjacent rails easier in other countries than in the US sometimes. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I know. Everywhere here in Canada, we've got these little terminal, like POS terminals that are wireless and 5 or 4G or something. But yeah, unfortunately, like the people that do know that use crypto here in Canada use some sort of a service that sells it through a credit card network, right? Like they do the conversion on the spot. I think was it Coinbase? I'm not sure which. Kind of like a BlockFi card, you know what I'm talking about? Where it's tied to your crypto account, and you just tap to pay, and it sells it for Canadian dollars on the spot.
Yeah, that's I finally, more for experimental purposes than anything, got a Coinbase card like 3 or 4 weeks ago or something.
Okay.
And so everything else has been like a non whatever, and I have to like buy reusable like burner cards kind of and do. But so I finally have one, and yeah, so I do have like a small balance that I just throw on Coinbase once in a while, so that the card works, and I don't have to do so many workarounds and stuff.
As
But
like a
also,
backup, I guess, right? As well, it's probably good to have.
yes, and it's kind of crazy because the way I've operated in the past has been like the prepaid cards aren't accepted everywhere. Most places, yes, but then you get
Online, I think, right? Like you need to put a postal code in or something for some
well,
checkouts online.
sometimes, but also in Europe, like the amount of this crazy life I live has led to a lot of weird knowledge that most people wouldn't have, which is 3D security. You know what that is? 3DS.
Nope.
It's basically a SMS 2FA for your bank card, where if you make especially for online purchases, if your number is used for an online purchase, sometimes you'll get a verification text to say, was that you? And you have to say yes, and then they'll let the payment go through. It's kind of a newer-ish thing, but it's required by law in the EU right now.
Okay.
And so, for example, so a lot of online purchases in the EU you cannot make with these more ghetto cards. In fact, even the Coinbase card doesn't have this, by the way.
Okay.
I learned the hard way when I tried to book a train from Zurich a couple of weeks ago, and it rejected the Coinbase card, which is about as universally accepted as a regular bank card. Because
Is it a
didn't
Visa?
have this. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's a Visa, and it's attached to your Coinbase account. You have whatever crypto in there. Like,
Huh.
of course, I have Dash in there, and it just subtracts as you tap it or whatever. But it's a physical card, too. So I was also testing that out to just recommend to normies who don't want to do the weird stuff that I do. But to be able to go all into crypto. Like, I figure if someone has a bank account and they try to spend crypto, if you can get rid of your bank account and just have, like, Coinbase on standby, it's better, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely having like more tools. Like, look, in your case where you're, a jet setter, globetrotter dude, like going to conferences, yeah, you're gonna run into all the friction points possible. I mean, as a Canadian, yeah, I'm looking forward to more mainstream adoption of crypto to crypto payment rails. Hey, listen, we're making some strides, and I think by the time by 2030, you were saying 5 to 10 years or something.
Yeah.
Maximum 10 years. I think we'll have some broader adoption.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that you will be able to, in 5 years, like the average person will be able to make some changes and just live all on crypto. And it won't be common, but you will be able, the infra will be up there so that you don't have to be like a hacker like I am, kind of. Like, you don't have to open source it, You can just kind of like choose that life, kind of like you choose Android over iOS, for example.
Yeah.
And then maybe 10 years from now, it'll be relatively common. But it's kind of funny. At Consensus, like a couple of people I was hanging out with a lot, Crimson Clad from the Hive ecosystem, and then Scott Cunningham, who's just an influencer in the Toronto area. Both usually, like, when you sit down for lunch with someone and you talk about payment options and stuff, that's how you really know who's legit and who isn't, as far as like the knowledge on crypto and hacks of how to use it as money. And they're both hardcore. Like, they both know. Like, I could get them both unbanked living on crypto in like a day or two because they know so much already. And so, both Canadians, right? So don't sell yourselves short too much. The Canadian crypto people have been some of the best people I've met in this space. Maybe it's something to do with the oppression. The oppression makes more hardcore people.
So like they're able to live off of crypto, you're saying?
Or in a lot of ways. Like, they know how to get their crypto and spend it, whereas the average crypto user has no idea how to spend their crypto. Like, they couldn't figure. They would have to do like weeks of research, whereas these guys, can do it right now, and that's a very very good thing. So there are things you can do for sure. There's a lot of the problem is like Canada's like security laws, from my understanding. make it difficult to use like non-Bitcoin cryptocurrencies sometimes. I know I was quoted that by some Canadian company that said, we'd love to take Dash, but we need a securities license for that, but we don't want to spend all that money on that, so we'll just have to accept Bitcoin. It's like,
Yeah, I know there was some reform a couple years ago where Canadian exchanges were limiting how much Canadians could buy annually, right, to $30,000 Canadian on all
Yeah.
cryptocurrencies except for Bitcoin, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Ethereum.
wow.
There are four
Yeah.
cryptos where you can buy as much as you wanted.
So Litecoiners are in the golden club then, huh?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, look, it's got 100% uptime for over 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a decent track record, a good reputation, and yeah, I mean, why not? It's still on. Was it the CNBC or MSNBC ticker? Right, when
yeah.
they talk about crypto.
Yeah, you
That's
got to be
something.
like, at that point though, you got to be like super intentional about taking it off. You know, you got to be like, yeah, this has gone to zero, or we hate them. It's got to be something dramatic because it's
Right.
been there for so long.
Like, you remember that Mike Novogratz clip, right? I don't know if you remember, but it was a big deal in the Litecoin community, where at some point he was on MSNBC, and he was saying, like, I don't know why you guys still have Litecoin up here. You should have Solana or Terra Luna up there instead.
Terra Luna, God.
Exactly.
I mean, Solana's still there though, so like Solana makes sense for now, but like,
Yeah. It's a thing, for better or for worse. But I still prefer Litecoin a million times over Solana.
of course,
Even Dash. I think, whatever. Solana's get community, I think, maybe just because of our core principles, you know.
yeah. I mean,
Launch and all that.
I think that like based on like technologically, I've come around a lot more to Solana because I know some people who are deep researchers who are some big fans, but like it's not, these are living economies and things, and like just because you can do cool stuff doesn't mean that's what people do. Just because the tech is technically decentralized doesn't mean the foundation isn't involved with subsidizing a bunch of validators. It doesn't, just because the supply is transparent and auditable doesn't mean that the foundation also didn't lie about how much Sol was ever going to be created. And like, just because you can use it for everything doesn't mean that it isn't mostly used for like meme coiny stuff. And like, so
Just because they say they can handle so many transactions per second doesn't mean that the network won't crash and grind to a halt.
yeah, or just because they're handling an impressive amount of legit transactions, if you get all the spam and the governance transactions out of there and stuff, just because that's impressive doesn't, I mean, I don't know. I'm so supportive of Solana doing their best, and we'll see what happens. And I'm just going to remain on the fence until there's a convincing thing either way, you know?
For sure. Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm still very happily a script maxi, for better for worse.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, why don't we speed run through these last couple things, right? Just,
for sure.
you
Yeah,
know.
what you got?
So just first of all, this I don't know if you saw this dark.fail post on the tweet or post on X or whatever that I shared about privacy coins and dexes and stuff. So he had a 2013 one. As far as I know, he's involved with like the Tor project and stuff. And anyway, or I don't know if he just linked to it. He says anonymous journalist.
2023.
Yeah, so sorry, 2023. Yes, he said privacy coins still have no DEX worth using. Obtaining untraceable money like Monero or Zcash Orchard requires leaving a trace on logged centralized exchange and swap sites. Today's biggest risk factor for surveilled crypto users. And then he quoted that like today, I guess, and he said, Zcash won the DEX arms race. It's now on 2 DEXs with over 1 million USD liquidity, Maya Protocol and Near Protocol. Monero still has no DEX, minimal liquidity on atomic swaps, and has every law enforcement crosser in the world aimed at compromising it. I have lost faith in Monero. So before I give my, Phil, with the filth coming out of my mouth, what is your kind of hot take on that?
I mean, look, I'm not XMR holder. I don't use it. I think Maya Protocol having Zcash. I didn't even know, frankly, before you shared this, that I assumed it was on Thorchain. I assumed XMR was on Thorchain. Was it removed at
No.
some point, or it never was?
No, it never was added for a few reasons. The biggest reason was technological. It just
Right, because you
such a
need the
pain
op
in the
returns.
ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also Monero addresses are so long that they
Hmm.
wouldn't fit into a Bitcoin op return field, so you couldn't trade Bitcoin for Monero the way
Okay.
Thorchain was structured at the time. They might have done some shorteners or stuff that. So that was the number one reason. It just wasn't technically possible for a while. And then also there was a time when Thorchain got under a lot of heat for like the Bybit hacker and people like that swapping through there, and they just didn't want to be like, oh my gosh, all these criminals using Monero to launder. And now it's just kind of a thing of where they're on bigger and better things, and the Monero community's beefed with them so hardcore that they don't really have the. I did, talk to some people who remain unnamed in the ecosystem, but they're basically like, yeah, those guys are they're so shitty, we're not going to add it. And also, one of the foremost like security researchers for Thorchain, not official, but like amateur doing this stuff, but a very talented one. Anyway, Luke Parker decided he's doing his own DEX called Sarai DEX, which he announced like in 2023, I think. And the primary reason to have this is because it'll be Monero first, sort of. And so that still hasn't come out yet, but could soon. So I guess that's kind of where it's going. And then the Maya protocol was like the initial Thorchain fork. I hardcore lobbied to get Dash on as the first new chain they added. And then they added a few others. And I also, as a side quest to help out my Zcash peeps, told them you absolutely need to get on Maya. Get on it now. I can make an intro. And so then now they're on Maya. So there you go.
Yeah, nice. No, I know basic swap DEX supports Monero, apparently, but
Yeah.
the liquidity is extremely low. But yeah, man, that's an interesting little factoid.
Yeah.
So
And-
the liquidity on Maya and Near is $1 million USD or each?
It's over 1 million on each of them. So let me look at the Maya statistics or the pools. Let's see. The total protocol liquidity on Maya, and Maya is tiny compared to Thorchain, is 16 million. So there's
Okay.
16 million in total liquidity. Now let
Wow.
me just look for the Zcash pool because that's kind of what he's talking about. I don't even know if this website even has. Zcash is so new, but Zcash is 1.18 million liquidity right now in Maya. So that's pretty decent, right? But more importantly, it's like if serious people want to move serious money through into Zcash, they can on Maya, and they can apparently on the Near Intense protocol, and on Atomic Dexes, as far as I know, there's no liquidity like pool. It's just individuals with individual orders to buy and sell, and then they get fulfilled, and they both sign and they do the swap. But there's no like if you wanted to move like a few million through, if you wanted to buy like $5 million worth of Monero on Basic Swap or Bisq or I don't remember all the other Atomic Dexes they're on, I think it might be difficult. Like I'm not 100%
Yeah,
sure,
no,
but
like-
it would be like you
Probably.
can't do
Well,
anything
that's-
real.
So remember, like in April, there was this hack, and like, was it 3,500 BTC was exchanged for Monero? Remember this thing?
Yeah.
and it was laundered over like 6 or plus exchanges and swapped for XMR, and the price of Monero spiked like over 50%. I think it was like over $300 or something US.
yeah.
Were these were exchanges? I fail to think of any exchanges besides maybe Kraken that still supports Monero.
I think that's like I think Kraken's the big one as far as like a centralized big exchange that still
Right.
supports Monero. And
There's a bunch of smaller ones.
yeah, a bunch of like sketchy ones in sketchy jurisdictions kind of thing. And I'm sure there's a bunch of swap services that kind of interface with exchanges that do it. Monero's on a decent amount of centralized exchanges still. Like the headlines are all, oh, it's got delisted everywhere, and it's like a lot of these places never listed it, and some other places removed it, and it's not like the delisting thing. It is a like if you want liquidity and access to Monero, it is a problem, but it's not like a actual problem. It's like a bad trend, but it's not like it's a real problem yet.
There
So,
are many
yeah.
workarounds, yeah, if you look in the right places. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
to be able to swap, like, was it $330 million worth of it? Like, that's impressive. That there's some liquidity there in order to do that. Yeah, sure, double the price, but still, like, that's to be expected. It's close to half $500 million.
yeah.
You know?
And the good thing is like these AMM type things that have like liquidity pools, you could get a lot of volume through there because first of all, Thorchain and Maya have something called streaming swaps, which basically breaks the swap into a bunch of tinier swaps so that
Right.
you don't move the price of the pool like that much when you do it. You have a lower impact. But
Yeah,
basically,
a larger transaction takes more time, right?
yes. And so basically that gives a lot of time for arbitragers to then go and buy and sell on the pool to like stabilize the price. But so basically you could like there's a lot of Monero and Bitcoin. Let's just say you're doing a Bitcoin for Monero swap of the orders of like 5 to 10 million. You could, if this was a liquidity pool thing, you could probably put that through a relatively small pool, and it would just take a while because there's a lot of random people with Bitcoin and Monero out there who'd be more than willing to profit off of the arbitrage from the price moving up and just
Right.
kind of balance that out as it goes through. Whereas if you just someone tried to dump it on like basic swap, like good luck. I don't know how they handle that. Like it would take like years of like, and you have to break up, well, not years, but it'd take a while. You'd probably have to break.
Some manual administration, perhaps. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think that's what this guy's talking about the decks and the volume and stuff. And it's interesting because I mean Zcash, like I guess they partially have me to thank for Maya, but they got the near intense protocol. Sounds like a very cool DEX, which I'll have to talk about some other time. I mean that's definitely a good achievement, but it's interesting that he says Monero has no DEX, minimal liquidity and everything. I have lost faith in Monero because of that. It's an interesting take. I don't know. It might be an extreme take to be like, that's a sign that it's not going anywhere. But it is a sign that Zcash is making some comeback moves in the privacy space. Because like a couple of years ago, notably when I got this shirt at ZCon in Barcelona in 2023, Zcash was kind of bottoming at that point. Like a lot of people were getting disillusioned and stuff. And Zuko, the founder, who is a good friend of mine, I love that guy, he ended up stepping down from the Electric Coin Company. And then Josh Swire who left ECC, came back to lead it as CEO. And he's been making some really bold moves that have been very effective. And so Zcash has been rebounding ever since. So it's going to be interesting to see. It still has a long ways to go before it catches up with Monero on, price and popularity and stuff. But the trend definitely, the court of public opinion trend seems to be in that direction.
Yeah, and this guy's talking about, like in his reply to you, he's talking about there's no liquidity to swap $10 million of BTC into Monero today. Like, yeah, okay, fair. Like, what is that possible with Zcash? Like, because there's two dexes with more than $1 million USD of liquidity. I mean, I don't know. The fact that these guys did it on six centralized semi-legitimate exchanges with $33 million. Yeah, I think Any means is still okay. But yeah, he's saying specifically that Zcash won the Dex arms race.
Mm-hmm. And he's saying that that is like the important thing, like a very important thing. And I'm not saying no, but I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. I'm 50-50 on that perspective.
I mean, so like like he's mentioning Trocador and stuff like that. Like, what are the limits for those swaps? I mean, obviously not 10 million, but for like everyday usage, it should be fine, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess it's just like if people needed access to this, like a mass onboarding thing, could you get it done? And also I think his perspective is mass onboarding in a hostile environment where like regulators are banning swaps, whereas like all the 36 million or whatever that went to Monero couldn't happen if all these exchanges were like aggressed upon, like the law enforcement was like shutting them down and stuff. So yeah, I mean he's kind of making a good point, but it's a little bit of a maybe a premature point, maybe a like a very focused on one aspect. On the other side, if you look at the transaction volume, Monero's doing 10 times Zcash transactions. And as far as like actual usability to buy and sell things, it's like Zcash is on Flexa, which is it's a big feather in its cap, but other than that, kind of nothing, you know? So the trend is very much in Zcash's favor, I would say. But it's just not a time to say that, like, you know, Monero's losing a privacy battle. Or I think you got to wait 5 years before we have to start saying that, you know?
Yeah, no, I'm not worried about Monero at all.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say I don't think it's going anywhere. Obviously, I think it's going to stick around for a long time, and it's just going to get stronger, if anything, over time.
Yeah, probably. It really depends on things because Monero's been really good at being this counterculture where it kind of didn't have a place. First of all, it wasn't usable until relatively recently because no mobile wallets and stuff. And then they got that in like, what, 2018 or 19, somewhere around there. But it was just everyone assumed crypto, including Bitcoin, was cypherpunk. And then those days are gone. So now that the culture is that way, the counterculture is the Monero way, and so they're doing great, right? So I don't know. I think, yeah, there's going to be a place for it for a while at least, I think.
Yeah. No, my experience with Monero most recently has been with BTC Pay Server. And there is a plugin for Monero. There's a plugin for Zcash as well. Right. These are the two other crypto or privacy enabled cryptocurrencies that are on it besides MWeb. And not to shill MWeb again too much in the BTC Pay Server plugin for MWeb, but
why not?
while I'm here, so with BTC Pay Server, if you want to have a Monero or a Zcash client, you have to share a single wallet for all your merchants for each store on your instance. For whatever reason, that functionality isn't possible yet. I don't know if it's just not available or if the developers haven't built it in yet. But with MWeb, for example, you just take the view keys from your MWeb clients and paste them into your MWeb store's wallet address, and you have MWeb enabled on a per store basis on your instance. Where the administrator has no access to the keys and all that stuff. But if you want to have a store host MWeb on BTC Pay, or rather Monero on BTC Pay Server, they'll have to run their own instance. They'll have to manage their own instance, which is a hurdle, certainly a hurdle for the BTC Pay Server Monero community. And the same thing goes for Zcash, unfortunately. I'm not sure what it is, but for one as well, like they recommend running, if you're gonna support Monero, they recommend you running it on its like just Monero alone on that instance because of the increased processing requirements of a Monero node.
Yeah.
It's apparently pretty heavy. You need a lot of CPU or memory and stuff, and it tends to monopolize it and cause the whole thing to fail if you have multiple blockchains there.
Interesting. Yeah, I do know that based on... So, Monero, like back in the day, right? So first of all, confidential transactions on its own, just the CT part of things, makes like transaction size is like roughly 50% larger or maybe double the like a regular
Okay.
transparent one. So it adds a little extra, which is again the data consumed with a regular Bitcoin, Litecoin transaction, whatever, is just pretty negligible. And so if you double that, it's not that bad. But then you start adding in, like, instead of you send one transaction, like Monero would send like 16, like is in one real one and 15 decoys. So then that's like 15 times. So it ends up being like, I think like back in the day, right? Monero used to have like a 30 to 60 times transaction size of a Bitcoin transaction data size. And there was a
Well,
time when
yeah.
the average Monero fees were like $2 for a period of time. And then they implemented something called bulletproofs, which basically reduced the data load for doing these cryptographic proofs by a giant orders of magnitude. So they're still much larger than like a Bitcoin transaction, but not that much larger. And I think I talked with when I interviewed David about MWeb. MWeb transactions are, I don't remember, something like 60% larger than a regular Litecoin transaction or something. They're like a decent amount larger. They're that's still very lightweight by privacy standards, right? But they're like a decent amount larger. But then because there's no blockchain, like there's no, you don't have like the same historical transaction history. It's not quite the same with MWeb. So
Yeah,
you
all the data
save,
gets truncated.
yeah. So you actually save data, total data storage for hard drive stuff, but the actual like
Right.
data transmitted is still larger. And I remember the first time I saw a shielded Zcash transaction being used in the wild. A friend of mine bought something from a shop, and he had a laptop with a command line wallet on because that's all that happened for the Sprout pool in Zcash. And he
Okay.
went in the shop and he generated the transaction with his like full node wallet thing, and it took like 10 minutes to generate the transaction
Oh Jesus.
on
Okay.
his laptop before sending. Now, with the Orchard pool, which is like the most current Zcash pool or whatever, any Android phone or iOS or whatever can generate the transaction like 3-4 seconds. So
Okay.
the tech has gotten astronomically better, and I would say that Zcash has gotten, because it's like the entire thing is a cryptographic proof, whereas Monero, it's where I'm going to start to say dumb things. So please remember, I'm not a cryptographer, but where because of the decoy system and stuff, you can't, maybe not as big, but you can't condense it all as easily. So Zcash transactions are getting, in the top level ZK proof stuff is getting smaller and smaller and smaller over time as they advance the technology, where there might be some limits to how small they can make Monero transactions. Now, this is something I've heard people post about on X, and I haven't done my research on that, so really take a lot of grains of salt on this part. What I hear is Monero's upgrade for full chain membership proofs, where instead of being in the future, instead of being like one of 16, you could be one of any possible historical input on the entire network. So it's kind of like a Zcash style as far as like the anonymity set per transaction, right? I hear that will have a larger data load than current Monero transactions. I don't know how much.
Okay.
I'm not going to spread FUD because I don't, I haven't done my research. But I personally think that ZK stuff is going to be the future, not just for privacy, but for crypto as a whole, kind of. And it's just still really new tech. And back in 2016, when Zcash came around, it was like horrendously new tech, like where it's like unusable. But now it's usable-ish, and
No, it's
we'll
gone
get
through a lot
there.
of changes for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know what the technical limitations are to like limiting the one wallet address for all the stores. Like, I feel like that should be solvable. But for the moment, it's like I think it's a blocker for a lot of BTC Pay server instances.
Mm-hmm.
And I know like there's what is it? NIM VPN. They accept
Mm-hmm.
Monero. they accepted Monero before they did Litecoin MWeb.
Interesting.
So I'm not sure how they're doing it. They must have a beefy server at the very least running it.
Yeah.
And they're running their own instance for sure.
Yeah, I just know a lot of stuff is very different, like architecturally, and I'm sure like the bandwidth type thing. Like if you're running a server for all this, you might overload things because it's more intense to run like a Monero node, for example. I don't know about the one address per thing. I do know
That might just be a limitation of the plugin that can be solved with some
Yeah,
developer.
I do know that most Monero wallets tend to have one address anyway. Like you use one address typically. I
Okay.
do know that some, for example, Monerujo will give you like a change address as well, because if you send Monero and you get change back to your whatever your address, you cannot then spend that for another like 10 minutes roughly or several blocks, because for privacy reasons, if you didn't wait a certain amount of blocks, then they'd be able to correlate that as then your spend, so they make you wait. And so
Right.
Monerujo basically keeps like two balances, so you can do like one after another. But someone stole a bunch of money from one of the Monero funds a few years ago, and one of the former Monero core team people who actually did work as a VP of Cake for a certain amount of time.
Oh, cool.
Justin
Okay.
Ehrhofer, or whatever his name is. He ran this thing called like Moonstone Research, and he did trace the Monero several hops away after it was stolen because of this certain, I guess, data leakage in the Monerujo wallet that this person apparently used to be able to do that. So maybe that's why they don't want two addresses, because then if you, or multiple addresses, because if you do receive to multiple addresses and then you go spend, now you can start to link those transactions together and hurt your privacy. It might be something like that.
Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, that's for someone else to solve, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Not me. No dumb.
Certainly not me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, you sent me all these pictures of like graphics cards and stuff.
Oh,
Do you want
my
to go
God,
through
yeah.
that or not?
sure. I mean, it was just because I don't know.
Yeah.
What is the point? I guess. Why are you talking to this guy? You know, who's this animal
Yes.
guy? I've been in crypto for a little while, I guess, and
Mm-hmm.
when I first got into it, I wanted to start mining.
Mm-hmm.
And a buddy of mine, we put some money together, and we bought this miner from Butterfly Labs.
Ooh, old school. Didn't they
the
rug
Monarch.
people?
Yes, they did.
I know you're not the only friend of mine who got rugged by Butterfly Labs.
Well, we actually got the miner, but it was like 2 or 3 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So by then, the hash rate had increased so dramatically that thing was basically a paperweight. But yeah, so like after about 6 months or so of waiting and realizing that I got screwed over, I bought these graphics cards over here.
Yes.
And because I want to start to mine Litecoin, because back then Litecoin was still mineable via GPU. And so this is my first exposure to crypto was with these graphics cards and mining Litecoin. I mean, funny story. If you continue, I don't know how many of these pictures you want to go through, but
I did all of them. I didn't do the bloody ones, but this one.
Oh,
so
okay,
you're,
okay.
you're opening the box on this one.
yeah. So this is me, like what, 10 years ago or something, more than that. And yeah, I was so excited. And I guess I had a buddy over with the camera. We were taking pictures because we've never seen these like such powerful graphics cards in our lives. We're looking forward to playing some games on them. And we had a couple beers. And I was taking apart my water cooling loop because back then I had a water cooled GPU. And using a box cutter, I was trying to remove the ATX cable, the power cable from the motherboard. I zip tied it to the back of the motherboard tray and kind of grabbed it like this, and I had the box cutter like that, and before you knew it, I was sprouting blood. I'd sprung a leak, a pretty healthy leak.
Significantly.
Yeah, I had to be rushed to the hospital. And luckily, where I was living at the time on Park Avenue was just down the street from a hospital. So the ambulance came, picked me up. Like my friend at the time called 911, and an ambulance was there within like 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And say like I arrived at the hospital at midnight. I was back home fixing my rig, and like the last picture that you showed was me like, at 1 a.m. with a bandaged hand, finishing my first Litecoin miner.
That is funny that you like didn't learn your lesson and like went back to it.
No, I was determined.
That same night.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, who could go to sleep with all that excitement? Anyways, so yeah, I was a little bit upset. You probably see I'm annoyed by the picture taking, but whatever. You can see the bandage. My hand is bandaged right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun.
So that just the ability to mine got you into that, right? Into crypto, right?
Right. Well, there weren't many exchanges either in Canada. You know what I mean? Like,
Or anywhere, really, for a while.
I think Coinbase was available. Quadriga was around back then, I believe, as well. But yeah, dude, that's like, yeah, I've been a Litecoiner for a while, and I still love the coin, and Dogecoin and Bellscoin. I think they're all fantastic.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. It is. I've thought a lot about like the nature, like consensus mechanisms and stuff, and like everything was proof of work because that's just what Bitcoin started with. Now proof of stake is like overwhelmingly the thing that people use, and then there's a few new-ish cryptos like Caspa, for example, that's proof of work, and also like the Quai network is another newish one that's.
Isn't Caspa like dying? Isn't the hash rate like? I saw something about that recently.
The Caspa people annoy me enough that I've avoided them to where I don't know the answer.
I think they're all bots. I think the Caspa community is a bot network. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few of those, to be honest. But so
Right.
that was one that was like, kind of a new-ish proof of work one that was hyped. And then the Quai network is just launching, like just recently launched, and the guy who runs that is a super OG in crypto. There's kind of a very interesting thing because it's like a purely proof of work, sharded, highly scalable chain that has a sort of energy dollar type thing, which is it's like a stable coin that's pegged to, like organically pegged to the price of producing the Quai token via mining kind of thing. It's like based on the energy cost type thing. So it's a relatively stable medium of exchange type thing, even though it's not pegged to a dollar. Just some interesting stuff. So there's a couple new mining things out there, but for the most part, everything's gone to proof of stake, to where I kind of forget sometimes about the early days, how many people got into crypto because of mining. Now, no one gets into crypto because of staking, really. Maybe some people do, but for the most part, it's not like I get to do this fun thing. I still remember in 2013, I think, it was like a bitter winter in New Hampshire. I just moved there, and my vehicle, the battery was just like not working. And it wasn't that the battery was like dead or anything. I had an electrical problem with the car.
Oh yeah, you had like a 5-volt leak or something, or 12-volt leak.
Something going on, and it was because I was driving down the highway at like 80 kilometers an hour, and then my battery just shut off of the car. I was like, oh shit, this is not good. It's not just the engine dying. It's just like it shut off and then came back on and stuff. So I had a mechanic come out in the snow, and he fixed it. It turned out to be a connection thing, like with the connectors and stuff. But
on the battery.
Yes.
Okay.
So it was a relatively easy fix, and he kind of fixed that out. And I asked if I could like pay him in Bitcoin, and he was like, let me think about that. Like, you're gonna, you'll be back or whatever, and we'll talk about it next time. Next time, he was already mining Bitcoin. He was just like, I heard about it. I just started mining this stuff. It's kind of cool, and it's just like that DIY kind of like, hacker vibe. Like people got excited it wasn't like everyone wants money, right? That's why people get into stuff like mining, but it's not like they crunch the numbers of how are they going to make the most money here. They're just like, I'd like to get, that's the incentive, but they're interested in it. It's like, ooh, this is cool. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to participate in the network and get something for it. And it's not quite like staking. You have to buy it first, and then you hope the staking revenue comes in. But there's a lot of people like as cool as your story is. Story is it's not entirely unique in that like a lot of people
for sure
started mining crypto before they used it. You know,
where I bought those GPUs at the computer store, the guy was like the sales guy was a young dude. You know, he's a gamer.
Not anymore. None of us anymore, huh?
Well, he's still younger than I am, but whatever. Like, yeah, he's 10 years older than when I first met him. Let's say. He was like, "What are you doing with all this stuff?" You know, and like I was telling him, I was like, "Yo, I'm mining freaking crypto." You know, he's like, "What?" And so that, like, yeah, same thing. Like he kind of learned about it, and he started mining as well shortly after. You know, and we were talking. So he's like showing me his rigs, and it's like, so yeah, so. I mean, yeah, back then, if you got it, you were excited about it, and yeah. No, it's funny the friends you make along the way, and. No, there's a lot of good stories, happy stories, I guess, that came out of it. I'm sure your mechanic buddy. I don't know, crypto had a huge impact on my life, and I'm sure it had a huge impact on that computer store tech's life after as well.
Yeah, some people oddly know. It's kind of funny how like there have been some crazy things, where like so for example, do you know who Callisti is? Does that name familiar? Yeah.
We met at Litecoin Summit.
Yeah.
Twice. Yeah.
He's a great dude. He got into Bitcoin, I think 2011, but then he kind of like checked out until 2021, and he got back into stuff. So he's a cool dude. He's like a hardcore now, but like obviously didn't retain him, and so there's a few people like that. But like for me, it's definitely the rabbit hole. And I guess that's the one thing is like, solo mining, like non-ASIC mining, is one of those like magical things to grow crypto, because you get a lot of people involved. They get technologically involved in the ecosystem a little bit, and then you start circulating the money because you start getting stuff out of it. Sometimes you have to pay electricity bills and stuff, and then you have to buy exchange to sell it. It's like a great bootstrappy thing, whereas like with something like proof of stake, maybe you have to find other ways of getting that going. So
it's harder, I think. Yeah, it's harder, I think, to prove like that the initial distribution was done fairly. Like with Solana, we can't. We just have to take the word for it, right? Like, yeah, we know they had a bunch of VC like investors and stuff, so they got allocated a ton of Solana. I mean, I think Ethereum is probably the only one where you can, because they did have like that proof of work beginning, right? But I'm not sure about Cardano, and whatever else might be out there. But obviously, Ripple's proof of stake, right?
Not even.
It's not even a crypto, is it?
No, it's a centralized thing.
Database, yeah.
Not to take a moment to bash Ripple, but it's first off a completely permissioned thing where whoever isn't a node on the list is passed by the Ripple Foundation or whatever their list, and so it's like completely permissioned. But more importantly, all the interbank transfer type stuff that they've been talking about, all the business, again, it's not heavily researched, so take it with a grain of salt. It's not done with the actual blockchain. Like, it's done by them. So, not to be too spicy, but XRP is kind of one giant crypto scam to VC fund a traditional payments company kind of thing. So that's kind of my perspective.
Their ambition is to take over Swift, isn't it? It's to replace Swift.
And not with the XRP ledger, but with themselves, the company Ripple, because they're not going to use the actual blockchain.
XRP, yeah. So it's such like a... I don't get it. When people try to show me XRP, I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? Yeah, but it's going to be the next Swift. Why would they choose that over Swift? Like, it's going to be other people. They're just going to give those fees away. Like, no, they're not. It's not going to happen. Maybe, but maybe the bankers who adopt it and they make less fees. I don't see that happening.
On War Volume or something. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't see why would they do that. You know,
Yeah.
it seems like a losing proposition. But hey, look, I mean, it's what is it like number 4 on CoinGecko?
Is
Blows my mind.
Ripple is or XRP as they try to say. Yeah, number
XRP,
4.
yeah.
And literally that means it's number 3 because Tether isn't really a crypto either. It's so
It's $124 billion market cap. Get out of here.
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Ethereum's market cap makes sense, right? Bitcoin's makes sense. Solana's even makes sense, right? But
I guess, yeah.
Tron's definitely makes sense because people actually use that stuff. Why is beyond me, but they got it. But like XRP, I have never met an XRP user ever in my life.
I've met a bunch of shills in real life. Traders,
Are
right?
they
But,
all
like,
old people?
they're all people who don't like Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
who don't like proof of work,
So,
and
yeah,
who like the banks for some reason. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why they have to be in crypto at all, but that is what it is. So we should probably start wrapping this thing up. I just checked the clock, and fortunately, it is shill o'clock. So it's time for you to shill whatever you want to shill here. So
Did we already talk about my podcast? I think we spoke about it before the show. I'm not sure.
Mentioned it, but I don't think we talked about it. Let me just pull up the
Populist Block.
yes. Yeah, I'm putting it up at the screen. So anyway, just feel free to talk about that.
Yeah, so the Populist Block, that it used to be, some people might remember the Litecoin Underground account. We used to do a weekly spaces. We still do weekly spaces, but under that account. And we've since rebranded to the Populist Block simply because, well, we didn't want to really associate Litecoin brand with what turned out to be like our political opinions, discussions and stuff, and debates that we would have. And frankly, while we were talking a lot about Litecoin at first, there wasn't that much to say about Litecoin at some point. Like development on a network that Litecoin works as it's meant to work, and development is a little bit slow. Although these days, partnerships and stuff are giving us more things to talk about. But yeah, so whatever. We rebranded, called ourselves a Populist Block, and we do a weekly spaces, which is we do it in a way that I think is kind of unique. We have like a live stream going at the same time, and then one of us will share the spaces tab, right? And we'll mute ourselves on live stream and just go live in the spaces, and we'll talk and we'll have our videos up there, and we'll have people come up on the stage of the spaces. It's kind of like a call-in radio show, right? We'll be talking about certain topics, and people will just be listening, and they'll want to chime in and like give us their 2 cents, right? Sometimes they just call and make fun of my mustache. I don't know. But yeah, it's fun, man. Honestly, this is the kind of thing, like I said, I started my X account during the pandemic, and it's kind of like a social outlet. And with Underground and stuff, doing this, it just kind of evolved. Like we're doing it. We do have sponsors that give us a little bit of something, but really the reason we're doing it is just because we enjoy talking to each other about what happened like during the week in the news and whatnot. Talk a lot about AI. We talk a lot about medical stuff. I'm a huge stem cell advocate. I got stem cell therapy in my shoulder at some point because I got a pretty bad rotator cuff injury. And so we talk a lot about like, the medical system in the States and how it's broken and whatever. Pharma companies profit on us being sick and yada, yada. Regular stuff, regular like things that people talk about with their friends, except we were doing it online, and yeah, we still do it. And no, it's just a fun time. I really enjoy doing it. Underground enjoys it, and we've got a couple of regular guys. For sure, once he changed the name, though, for whatever reason, the engagement just dropped. I think people don't recognize that it's still us up there talking. So if anyone was a fan of Like One Underground, and is missing us, this is where we are at the Populist Block.
Yeah, the X algo is interesting. It's a fickle mistress, I should say.
Yeah.
I get okay engagement on my account, and anytime I do any kind of a shit on BTC type thing, it just goes crazy, especially on Lightning stuff. Like, anytime I'm like, Sailor says this is the bad thing. Anyway, anytime I'm like a black pillar on Bitcoin, which is not all the time. Whenever I say something moderately nice about Bitcoin, this doesn't do that well. So like my usual crypto stuff does okay. That stuff does really well and like gets me like quoted in like Bloomberg and shit because it's like it just goes, it rocket ships. And anytime I post like personal, social, or political stuff, I get like 2-4 likes. It's really not big when other people are doing really well with that subject material. So I think you're supposed to stick in a lane for the most part. Although I have been every once in a while dipping my toes into more political, populist type subjects a little bit, and trying to be less explicitly political, like, about
it's so hard not to be, man. Like the things happening in the world today are just, it's so hard not to be affected by it.
Yeah.
And yes, I guess it's like a healthy outlet for us to talk about this stuff, because doing so in the workplace is no longer really socially acceptable.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Can't be friends anymore.
Well, that's kind of the sad thing, right? Like if you have an opinion, if you react to propaganda differently, you might get canceled. So yeah, I don't know. It's a fun outlet. And next week, I mentioned to you again, I'm not sure if we already spoke about this, but we've got this guy from the Alpha School, which is a school that has like an AI driven curriculum.
Yeah, you mentioned the Alpha School. I didn't know that you had someone from it coming.
Yeah. Man, what's his name? Shoot. Excuse me just a moment. I'm going to pull it up. Steve something?
Yeah.
Oh, Reese Harding on July 9th. So
nice.
Reese Harding, he's is he? Yeah, that's the guy, right?
Did you find him?
Yeah, I believe it is Reese Harding, who is from the Alpha School. We're going to talk to him on July 9th. So that should be fun. Like I'm super excited to hear what the future of education will look like.
Yeah.
I think the system's been super archaic for so long, and it needs a reform. And if AI can do it well and cheaply, and bring up our grades, you know what I mean? Like, and make the younger generation more capable than we were.
Absolutely.
Not that we're, but like, yeah.
Well, yeah,
I'm excited about it.
It's definitely education is one of those big archaic things, and that's something that like I was involved in. Like my previous career was in politics, like public policy, nonprofits, and stuff like that. And I kind of got out of it because crypto just took over everything. Right? I just decided I got to do this stuff. But also there was always a little bit of a sad part of it where it's kind of like spitting in the wind trying to get anything done, where you just like the world's going this way. There's something new that sort of started to happen over the last 5 to 10 years maybe, where you're starting to see innovative things in government and politics, which mostly I guess in the US, but also like places around the world are like when China started doing special economic zones like Hong Kong. Like that's one of those things that hadn't been done, and that's like a help. And then of course you have like the school choice movement in the US, which really feeds into a lot of this kind of stuff. And then you have other things where like there's actually a special economic zone in a reservation, a Native American reservation in North Carolina at one point. A friend of mine was telling me about. There's some like interesting stuff happening in a lot of different ways. And for example, like the medical deregulation is starting to happen in the US very slowly, very brick by brick at the local statewide level, such as like for example, New Hampshire just passed like just got signed into law like during the podcast actually,
Oh wow. Okay.
a rate to try bill thing. We're basically approving experimental medical approaches for people who have like serious or like terminal conditions.
Oh yeah.
And so like there's stuff like this that's like these concepts that are starting to crack through. It's I'm still way more excited to be in crypto, but it's starting to get more exciting to be in like public policy and like politics and stuff now for some people in some cases. So, I mean, I'm sure some of this, it'll take a while to filter to Canada because there's a little bit less of a, like a rogue spirit kind of, but I think
Yeah.
I'm
If
still
we see like
I'm
if we see
optimistic
things
about
like
Canada, I have to say. Like
Yeah.
maybe not next couple of years, but it's going to come around.
if we see you guys doing cool stuff, we're gonna get real jealous and put some pressure on our politicians.
Yes.
Like I would love to see you guys approve some kind of stem cell therapies, like for soft tissue. There's so many people that struggle with pain, right? And that was my shoulder was caused me so much pain. I had like radiating shocks of pain on my arm. I couldn't sleep at night without anti-inflammatories and stuff. And my treatment options here in Canada were limited. I was given just progressively stronger anti-inflammatories, ibuprofen type of thing, and they were eventually going to give me a shot of corticosteroids, and then after that, some surgery, right, to try to repair the issues. But when I went to Mexico and I got my stem cells, like it was one treatment, dude, and my shoulder is my this is my bad shoulder. It's stronger than my other shoulder now. It's been 2 years since I got my treatment, and yeah, I'm a believer, dude. I feel like stem cell therapy, mesenchymal stem cells are like the fountain of youth, and it's tragic that so many people are being treated with opioids for pain when a stem cell infusion or stem cell shot could, in many cases, reduce the inflammation that causes the nerve pain, and in some cases cure them completely. But of course, I mean, yeah, like the reason why they don't allow it in the States, people are saying, is that you can't patent a biological byproduct, and so there's no profit to be made on them. Whereas there's tons of profit to be made on fentanyl.
Yeah.
Which is diabolical and disgusting.
Yeah, the brick by brick, like another thing that again got passed a few hours ago, signed into law a few hours ago, was a deregulation and on something else in the healthcare area, which is apparently there's something called like a certificate of need, and I might be conflating a few different law things, but basically by law there's only allowed to be a certain number of hospitals per like population. So if there's already a hospital in a rural area that has a low population, you can't build anything else. It's just by law you can't. And
you can't. You're a private clinic or something, or
yes, like all that stuff. And so there were some cases, people in the North Country, closer to Quebec, that would have to drive an hour to get to a birthing center of when they're giving birth. So basically, this law doesn't fix it entirely, but basically significantly reduces the radius around that would basically block things like urgent cares or birthing centers or other healthcare businesses from growing from competing in this certificate of need kind of thing. And so every time first off, great that there's momentum in the right direction, but every time I hear about this kind of stuff, I'm just reminded at how awful the system is. And like people pretend sometimes that the U.S. has a free market healthcare system, and nothing could be further from the truth. And so, but I'm encouraged by all these like little ideas creeping in. There's like a lot of zoning reform happening as well to help people build houses and stuff. There's a lot of interesting stuff, and yeah, it'd be worth paying attention to what's going on in New Hampshire, and not just New Hampshire, a lot of places in the U.S. at least, from that kind of a standpoint. If you look underneath the whole, you know, the diversity of the daddy's home, all that like the weird nonsense at the national level. You start to drill down. There's some interesting grassroots stuff going on. But yeah,
Nice. Yeah, it's encouraging. Big time.
yeah, I'm sure if you looked close enough in Canada, you'd see some stuff like that too. I think. Anyway, but we should probably end this thing now. It's been going almost 3.5 hours. Usually, that's just the spaces on the Dash account on Thursday. But so, other than the Populous block, people can, I'm sure, follow you on your actual X account here. Let me bring that up here.
Animal _ Litecoin.
Yes, but ANML as far as
ANML. Yeah,
Animal.
like one of those fancy EDM DJs, right? It cut out half the syllables.
with just like a weird chicken head or something, you know.
Yeah, just sound it out. You'll get it. You'll figure it out.
Yes. So everyone go follow him and try out the MWeb BTC Pay server, and then tune into the Populous block. Which is it Wednesday nights at like 9 p.m. or are there?
Yeah,
other
Wednesday
times?
nights 9 p.m. We'll sometimes do, like I said, we're doing this merge thing now, but we often do interviews on Saturdays.
Live interviews.
Yeah, live interviews. I don't know how we're gonna do it. We're still experimenting with this whole thing, but it's a work in progress. You know, like I said, we've got a couple sponsors which we're very excited about, so it's like encouraging us to keep going. And frankly, like I said, like we just have fun doing it, and
That's the big.
I'd be doing it for free practically.
Yeah.
I am doing it for free.
Well, but the fact that you're starting out with some sponsors is actually really good. I mean, I did my podcast for like 3.5 years before any approached me. So, yeah, there you go. All right, guys, everyone, thanks for watching. This has been a really long one, but it's for a reason, just no reason to cut it short. So, thanks everyone for watching, and tune in next week. Still got a little bit of a teaser for not the live show, but I'm uploading the interview that I did with my friend Keith Ammon, who got the first ever strategic reserve bill passed in New Hampshire and signed into law. So
yeah.
And I talked to him at Consensus, even though he lives very close to me. So look forward to that on like Tuesday or Wednesday, and then who knows who's going to be on the live show next week. I haven't thought that far ahead. But enjoy the weekend, guys. Don't forget that taxation is theft. Your phone is spying on you, and that fiat is a scam. So start living on crypto before it's too late, and de-Google your phone. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.